Maintenance worker 1 level position to a full-time position. Okay, so we can have the staff, is there a staff report or just the city clerk announcement?
No, there is a presentation, and I'll just get
How long is it going to be?
right through. Give me five minutes or less.
No, not 5 minutes.
All right.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. So this is a good thing. This started in June of last year. Really, the catalyst was all the dollars that we need for, whether it's for City Hall or any other infrastructure improvements throughout the city, and really looking at what programs are being subsidized, and our stormwater fee is one of those. They were instituted in 1992. They have not been touched since their inception. And so it was from that we went through quite a bit of public outreach and coming to council. This is just how I'll have this structured. I think just getting right to the point in terms of the ballots that were processed, we went through a very prescriptive Proposition 218 process on this. We received a total of the 4,700 plus ballots were received, and if you recall from that 218 process, we had a protest hearing back on May 7th. We didn't have 50% of the parcel owners saying no to it. We proceeded then with council direction to a ballot. Ballots were mailed out on May 20th, and to every parcel owner within the city, approximately almost 17,000 parcels. And this is what we received. It was about a 31% or so ballot turnout, which was very good. So this is the result here. We needed to have a 50% plus one for the ballot to be supported, and we did receive that. The margin was fairly tight at about 116 ballots were separating the yeses from the nos. You may ask yourself why there was more votes than ballots. We just have several property owners within Cupertino submitted ballots for several properties at one time on the same ballot. You could have up to 14 properties on one ballot, and that's why that's there. Wow. This I won't go through these slides, but just the different steps that we followed. Beginning in June, we surveyed all of our residents, really found out what the key points were important to them. We wanted this to be successful. We were looking at a new fee that would be less than $50 annually for the typical single-family home. Did a fee study, a very objective study to determine what fees should be. I mentioned the May 7th public hearing. No protest was received. We did the balloting around May 20th, 45-day period. We just opened up all the ballots back on July the 8th, I believe it was, and now we're here to this evening. Just to give you an idea of the different community meetings that we had, well attended. Generally, went to the Rotary Club. You can see that. Just to go over some of the specifics of this new fee, and I just want to remind everyone that this is in addition to that 1992 fee that is $12 per year for the typical single-family home and the $144 on the commercial. So this is in addition to that. That was very clear in all the balloting material and in our community outreach. The fee that came from the fee report and was authorized by council was $44.42. If you do authorize it and it gets placed onto the tax roll where this fee will be received, it will bring in $1.1 million of revenue. Fiscal controls, annually it is audited. It will be audited by an oversight committee. This fee can only be used for this purpose in which it was collected. It can't be used anywhere else. A provision of it has an annual cost indexing of up to 3%. That's only based on actual cost. It would be looked at by the oversight committee annually. It would come to council annually if there is that additional cost, and then council would have the discretion of whether or not to impose that additional fee or not. It does not have to occur. We also have some provisions for a residential incentive program. Up to $25,000 is built into the fee report and into the fee structure. To assist residents in putting in pervious pavement or rain gardens and the like. We had a unique element in the fee for a 25% reduction for developers who did mandated low impact development. What? And the low income subsidy.
Please, can you finish up, because
all right.
We've been through this so many times already.
All right, then you know it. All right, so the enhanced services came in there. That was part of the fee. All right. I did all this. I think one of the things is adding converting a one-time maintenance worker to a full-time. That's about a $70,000 impact annually. That is part of the fee structure that went forward. This is the recommended actions. Just next steps. Is August 20th. We'll be coming back. If you recall, we're going to be with CUSD to amend the joint use agreement so that they're not paying sites that we're maintaining. We'll bring back the low-income discount for property owners and also the residential rebate program that I mentioned. We have Susan Barnes from SCI Consulting. They were involved. The consultant did a very good job. I want to really commend our staff.
Mayor, do we have any public comment?
Yeah, I have a public comment. Thank you. One card, Peggy Griffin. Welcome.
Mayor Scharf, council members, staff. I don't know if this will work. Can you kind of see it? Section 3 in your attachment B, draft ordinance, section 3.38.160, special fund use of revenue. It states that interest on revenue may be credited to the general fund or to any other fund in the discretion of the city council. I'm asking you to keep the money where it was generated, put it back in the same fund in hopes of keeping the fees from increasing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Okay, we'll bring it back to council if there's any questions or comments. John?
I like what the resident just said. The money should stay where it belongs.
Well, the concern I would have with that is we've just balloted, having read the ordinance prior to the ballot. So, I would have some concerns about somebody challenging our action were we to amend it in the second reading.
I don't think he's suggesting amending it. I think it's that it's up to the council to say, let's keep the interest income in the storm
Okay,
drain.
so were we to change
But not change
the
it.
ordinance in the second
Right.
reading, I would have concerns about somebody challenging the measure.
No, I mean, I would agree that it's kind of fair to
But yeah,
keep that interest
what
in the same
what we knew,
fund.
what we know from all of our prior work on this, and we've had many meetings on this, is that our costs associated with this will not be covered by the fees. We will continue, correct? I'm looking to Public Works, in order to meet the ever more stringent requirements of storm drain runoff and our obligations to get that Regional Water Quality Control Board approval. Our costs going forward will exceed the revenues that we get from this in the 92 measure. Therefore, right, we will be continuing to subsidize
Correct.
things out of the general fund. It's going to go the other way, in fact, so. as a
Right, I
practical matter.
mean, I think we chose this amount knowing that
Right, we
was
had an
going to be the
option of
case,
$100 or something.
but
and
we
said,
wanted
well,
something that would pass.
Right,
And that's
exactly.
what we ended up with.
So I would like to move that
John.
we.
I have a question. So this money won't go into a specific fund? It will just go directly to general fund?
No, the interest income, not the money, not the fee, but
So the fee will
any interest
collected,
Right.
will not go into a separate
It goes
fund?
into the storm drain fund.
It will go into
for
a
this
storm drain
purpose.
fund?
Yes.
the interest.
Well, the revenues received from this fee go
The
into
revenues,
storm- into the fee.
but the question was about the interest
Right.
on the revenue.
That's
And,
correct.
I mean, it's not going to be that much, but, right, the council can vote
Okay.
to put it into that fund.
And I think one other concern Peggy had earlier was this ballot measure the council has the ability to approve a CPI increase every year, and there is a concern that it might multiply over time. So I think it's impractical for residents to keep tracking when it might come back to the council every year to approval for an increase. Is it possible that we create an e-notification so that someone can sign up and then every year, whenever it's on the council to improve for potential increase, they will always get notified?
Well, yes,
Like a
that's-
storm drain, clean water item.
Yeah, I mean,
Any
that's.
change to that?
I mean, that's
they get
possible. I mean,
notified.
every year, if you recall, with our 92 fee, we just did it last month. We come in and because we have to have you authorize the fee, and even if it doesn't increase at all, we come every year and as we would with this. It's just a standing thing
Yeah,
that
but
we
the residents won't know which meeting will have that, so if they can get email notified, then.
We could certainly set that up on our webpage, and people who
Yeah.
choose to elect that, we could do
Yeah,
that.
they can opt in and do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is that it doesn't, obviously, we don't want it to go up the whole 3% every year, but, you know, there's a lot of labor involved here, and we just approve, or we will approve a new labor agreement later, and, you know, it probably will increase slightly.
Yeah, I'm
each year.
concerned that the Ross says this amount we collect won't cover even the expense. Then
Right.
likely we are going to increase. Then people might object, so we need to let them know in case this is ever on the council agenda. And
yeah.
thank you for putting the waiver for the school district in August. That was
Okay.
something else I want to
Okay,
ask.
John, did you have a question? No. Darcy? No, I don't have anything. Anybody else?
I'll do my tabulation of results.
Great.
And reading.
Announcement.
Of the second,
Reading, yeah.
Reading, the second.
Yes, I
reading,
can do
right?
it at the same time. So the official tabulation of results, there were 51.15% of yes votes and 48.85% of no votes. So that is enough for the fee to pass. And I will also do the second reading of the ordinance, which is number 19-2183, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino adding Chapter 3.38 of the Municipal Code to establish the clean water and storm protection fee.
So I would move that we receive the city clerk's announcement of the tabulation results, and 2, we adopt resolution number 19096, accepting the tabulation results for the fee. That we, number 3, conduct the second reading, as just read by the clerk, and enact ordinance number 19-2183. And I would move that as part of this motion, 19-2183 be read by title only, and that the city clerk's reading constitute the second reading thereof. And then, number 4, to adopt resolution number 19-097, amending the 1920 annual operating budget to cover one part-time maintenance worker, 1 level position, at a current cost of $29,830 per year, to 1 full-time maintenance worker, 1 level position, at a starting cost of $99,840 per year in Public Works.
Great, I'll second that.
Motion carries unanimously.
And then I would move that ordinance number
19-2183.
19-2183 be enacted.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Okay, we are on to item 24, updates to the policies on sister cities, friendship cities, and international delegations. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So staff was directed to take a look at the policy guidelines on sister cities, friendship cities, and international delegations. The first part was to take a look at the sister city related travel expense reimbursements. So we reached out to a handful of cities in the US Valley and some other cities like Palo Alto and Mountain View to take a look at what they did or what they do. And what we found is that none of these other cities mention travel expense reimbursements, whether it be in their sister city policies or resolutions. But what we did find out was that all cities reimburse through a city or council travel policy similar to the one that the city of Cupertino has. So when we went back and took a look at everything, we figured we would continue council's fiscal stewardship and transparency of mentioning the reimbursement amount within the sister city policy, demonstrate parity among the 4 Cupertino sister cities, and follow best practices of our neighboring cities. So what staff is going to be recommending is deleting the portion of the sister city reimbursements that states the city will pay for 50% of 1 trip per year per council member, provided the trip is in conjunction with an official delegation. And what we'll recommend adding is that the city will pay travel expenses in accordance with the travel policy city official for up to 4 trips per year related to official sister city delegations. The 4 trips will include 1 visit to each of the 4 Cupertino sister cities. The mayor will have first claim, but the mayor does hold the right to allocate some or all of the trips to other council members. The second part was to take a look at the Friendship City, a Friendship City cap. So at its peak, Cupertino had 27 Friendship City relationships. Tonight, you'll be taking a look at that in the next item, but the number has now dropped to 7 with 2 renewals tonight and 1 new application. If approved, that would bring us to 10 Friendship City relationships. Friendship cities, there are not nearly as many friendship cities as there are sister cities within California, so we had to take kind of a broad approach. These are the 14 other friendship cities within the state of California. As you'll see, most cities that have a friendship city program only have 1 to 2. Only 1, Oakland, has more than 10. So staff is going to be basing its recommendation on the fact that we currently have 7 friendship cities with 3 others tonight. Capping the amount would free up council and staff time to focus on establishing stronger relationships with the approved cities. And a cap on friendship cities also ensures that adequate city time and resources could be spent on our formal sister city relationships. And so we would recommend capping the friendship city relationships at 10. And I'm here for any questions.
Okay, are there any speaker cards on this? Okay.
Not for this item.
So I had just one comment on page 3 under train or bus, where it says receipts for bus or train tickets are required for reimbursement. So
Okay, is that for the travel policy?
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only issue I have is, and I encounter this fairly often, I go to the MTC building in San Francisco, I take Caltrain with my Clipper card, there is no receipt.
Yeah.
And I never try to get reimbursed because it's just not worth the hassle.
Okay.
So I would just, I mean, what I would like to see the city do is to provide Clipper cards for the council members to use for official business. I've mentioned this several times, but nothing ever seems to progress on that.
I'm getting a nod from our admin services director, so we'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only comment I had. And as mayor, I have no interest in going on 4 trips, so anyone else that wants to go, it's fine. I'm going to visit Cupertino in September, and that would be the only one.
Can I ask what these other cities, our peer cities, actually do when a council member travels to a sister city? Do they pay 100% of the trip?
They do, yes.
For all these cities, they pay 100%, and how many trips per year?
Well, Cupertino has an interesting, issue in that our council members, particularly our mayors, are very much involved and want to visit our sister cities. There are cities that don't have their council members who do go on these trips. who don't visit their sister cities. But when they do, yes, what we found out from these cities that we reached out to was that, yes, they would go through their travel policy, which would probably end up paying pretty much 100%, as long as it was for an official delegation.
So do we know how many trips in Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, Mountain View are taken per year to sister cities?
The only one we found out, at least recently, was Saratoga, and that was last year. And that mayor actually did not ask for reimbursement.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I saw one other thing here under private vehicle, where it says you'll pay the lesser of the mileage rate or the airline coach fare. That's kind of ambiguous. You know, you could find an airline coach fare to Los Angeles that was $60 or $800. I mean, how would you ever determine this? I mean,
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. This was created by our admin services department. So we're taking down your comments, and we'll definitely go back and take a look at this.
okay, but I mean, we're approving updates today, right? So.
Well, not to the travel policy,
Oh,
just to
oh,
the sister city policy.
okay. So this was just kind of thrown in here.
This was just,
together.
just in case any council members weren't aware of this, we wanted to be sure you were.
Okay, all right, yeah, so we don't really have, I guess we don't have to talk more about this now unless people have comments on it.
So I have a comment about the number of friendship cities. So the current 7, I suppose, how many? 3 are from Taiwan, maybe the others are from China.
Correct.
And then if we approve another 3 today, that would be 7 all from China. Then, because someone is in Amsterdam were mentioning, oh, maybe the Cupertino resident, they have a relative. She actually moved there, but she still has a house here. And then we were joking about, okay, maybe we should have Friendship City. But then if we cap at a 10, then maybe a Friendship City from a totally new country can even be considered. I'm just wondering, should it be determined maybe by country?
If you have a specific proposal, I'm all ears. I mean, of course, getting to 27 was just bizarre to me and pushed by a prior council member, and we all went and sort of shook our heads and what's this about? And what somebody suggested, and I don't know if this is true, is that when people want to leave mainland China, if they're traveling with an official delegation, meaning to a friendship city, they have an easier time. I don't know if that's the reason or not, but that was what was suggested to me, and that's, I guess, one of the reasons why we ended up with 27 of these things.
Now, yeah, per country though, since a country like China with however many billion people is a little different than a country, with a few 100,000, you can't just do it per country. And it's true, we would have 10, but as some of those expire, that would open others up if we wanted to expand it. And
I guess one of my concerns with what's stated in the presentation that really is a change from prior council direction is we basically said, okay, council member, if you want to go pursue this, fine, but we do not want staff to invest. Because, I mean, at 27 or even at 10, right, we have to be thoughtful about the fact that when these international delegations or friendship cities show up, if we're taking an hour or two of staff time for every one of these visits, that adds up to a lot of taxpayer money being spent. And I think, I kind of object to the idea that, I think we ought to give due, we ought to give due the staff time we're willing to devote to the 4 sister cities and leave it at that, and have the friendship cities be handled by the local committees here that are sponsoring them, rather than insist that we spend a lot of time, staff time on these friendship cities. So that would be my suggestion to my colleagues.
I mean, I would keep that the same. We've already allocated in our budget under the assumption that staff time is being used for some of the Friendship City delegations. I mean, I voiced some concern over that allocation, having coordinated a lot of these visits in terms of hosting the delegations last year. But given the fact that we've already budgeted it, I mean, I think it would be inconsistent with what we've already carved out financially. And I would love to see staff involvement in some of these visits. It's just that I really had no sense that, I think it turned out to be something like either 10 hours a week or a month. It was a lot of time. But to then allocate it and then say, well, you don't have to spend any time on it, then, you know, I think that would be kind of the worst of both worlds. So I do agree with the cap, though. I mean, I think having a less unwieldy or unlimited amount, a non-unlimited amount of friendship cities is a good idea. I mean, especially given the fact that if you have kind of a finite amount, you can have a sense of expectations of what kind of bandwidth you're going to be, you know, allocating for that year. And you can also probably do a better job of cultivating those relationships within a set number. In terms of whether we can allocate or put a limit, you know, perhaps on particular jurisdictions, I think within perhaps a somewhat higher limit of say 15, and say at the most, you know, a certain amount can come from one jurisdiction, such as 7, right? If we're looking at potentially having 7 from one country. So, yeah, I'd be willing to, you know, consider that. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, the travel policy seems reasonable. You know, it's a lot of time and opportunity cost to serve in the first place, and on top of that, to, you know, basically use your $700 over 4 or 5 months to go travel to a sister city when you wouldn't really normally do that under your own time. You know, to me, I think that's pretty reasonable. One thought I had was that perhaps allocate it and divvy it out to each of the individual council members, as opposed to put all 4 in the mayor's, you know, bucket, so to speak. But, you know, that's fine. I'm sure our relationships are sufficient such that you're not going to have a mayor year after year after year say, I'm going to take all 4 trips or something like that.
I mean, did any mayor go to all 4 cities?
I went last year in 2 trips.
Oh,
So
okay.
1 to Japan, and in a 10-day trip, I, you know, visited 3 of them in order to kind of reaffirm, precisely for the reason that we then had something like 30 friendship cities, and a lot of our sister city committees were getting very concerned and saying, hey, look, you're kind of divvying out your attention to a lot of, you know, different types of interests here. So, yeah, that was grueling, you know, and we did the 50% reimbursement there after some back and forth and discussion with staff. But I mean, I don't think I even put in for a reimbursement for the sister city trip to Japan. But in any event, you know, it's a fairly minimal kind of thing, you know, given the city budget, and, you know, given the impact that it has upon a large number of people within our city that have these types of relationships that they nurture over the years. I think it's a pretty good incentive structure that you're laying out here. But I would be open to, say, increasing the cap on friendship cities by 5 and putting a cap on friendship cities from a particular jurisdiction.
Yeah, I would not want to increase it more than, I mean, 10, in my opinion. Look at all the other cities that they surveyed, and only 1 has anything. You know, they have 18, and Oakland's a much larger city than us. What was the distribution? Did anybody have more than like 3?
I think Oakland had 18. And then
Millbrae,
some 2.
yeah, Millbrae has 6.
6. Okay.
You know, Fresno,
We're
a much
special.
larger city than us. Long Beach, you know, San Francisco. You know, nobody is doing this. I think 10 is definitely sufficient.
I concur with that.
I mean, 10 is already I get calls, can you come? A Friendship City is coming, and it's like, wow, I don't even know what to talk to them about. I mean, I give them a tour of our fabulous city hall, and, it's just, I'm at a loss of what to do when they come, or I don't know what they expect. I mean, are they, and really why they're here.
Well, I mean, I know from my experience meeting these folks, right? Some of them naively think that we're going to help them do deals with, God knows, a fruit company in town or something else, right? The truth is, all of these visits and trips we have and the exchanges we do are cultural and they're ceremonial, right? So I will be voting no on this. I frankly think the policy we have, reimbursing 50% of airfare, is respectful to our taxpayers. I think paying for council members to go on 4 international trips a year is pretty rich, and while some cities might, in fact, allow that, I don't know, I just don't believe that that's the practice of council members in other cities. So I can't support this tonight. But I respect, the general thought that we do put a lot of time in, and so if this is a perk that my fellow council members think that taxpayers appreciate, so be it. But I won't go there.
I'm fine with leaving the policy as is as well. So, I mean, we don't have to bring a motion on it.
Well, I mean, are you talking about the Friendship City policy or the travel policy?
The travel policy.
But I thought we're not bringing that tonight.
So it's 2 parts of the same policy. They're both connected
Okay.
back to the sister city policy.
Right.
So you could take action just on the cap if
Okay.
you were interested, and not take action on the
So, I mean,
reimbursement.
originally I brought this up because they asked me to go to the Cupertino sister city. So, it's not $700 anymore. I think we get $680 a month for serving on city council. It's hard for me to go home and say to my wife, hey, do you want to pay for me to go to Italy on a trip?
Well, that's already been addressed, right?
Right, so we're not all rich. Yeah, that is a single one that's addressed.
Right, your
But I
trip has
think
been-
going forward, I don't think it's an unreasonable amount of money,
So this
for
is,
whoever is mayor to be, or council member, to be able to visit our sister cities without burdening themselves financially.
Well, let's see if there would even be a second on any kind of motion from this. I mean, I wouldn't bring it and I wouldn't second the motion.
I support the mayor. I think this is at most 4 trips a year, right? I mean, going on any trip, it's a lot of commitment of personal time. Even if it's put 100% paid trip, I'm not even sure I would want to go, because it would spend my personal time going there, just official business. It's not fun at all. If I go anywhere, I would like to go with my family to really have a trip. So now if I have to pay 50% for a trip, that's really just official shaking hands. Yeah, I suppose not every year this will be done, because the delegates probably won't go every year. But if any council member or mayor can take the time to actually go, I think we should support 100% reimbursement. Thinking that I think Sunnyvale council members are paid about $10,000. I think about $10,000 a year.
No, I thought it was 25 for council and 50 for
25.
mayor, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think Fremont also pays a lot more. And not only we are what we are paid doesn't even cover all the donation I have to make to the different organizations that want me to attend, not only my time, my money, and then, so this is a volunteer job that really is, for us who are not rich, it is a financial strain, yeah. So,
John?
I'm kind of on the fence.
yeah.
I think I'd be inclined to leave it as it is. I don't see a reason to need to make a change at this point. If and when somebody was truly compelled to be doing more of these trips and needing more reimbursement, let it come at that time. But for us to go and make a change without there really being an impetus, yeah, we talked about it, but I don't see I haven't heard a significant reason to make a change tonight.
So you want to do it on an individual basis if someone, if someone needs to or wants to visit a sister city?
Yeah, I like that idea, that if there was a set reason, there was some special event that was going on, and yeah, bring it to the council and we'll consider it and conceivably approve it.
How about maybe, let's say 2 trips a year, and then if there's any special occasion that, I guess rarely someone would be doing 4 trips a year, then we come back for special approval.
Again, I just don't see a reason to be making a change tonight. I mean, if and when there's really a reason
Because
to,
if either you support the trip or don't go at all, 50%, what does that mean?
but I think what Mayor Scharf said, though, is that a councilman could come and ask for a different reimbursement because of a event that they think is very important for the city. But to make it a standard policy,
No, what I mean is if a council member is representing a city on a trip, an official trip, not sightseeing trip, I think maybe we can limit the number of trips, but if someone is spending their time volunteering and going to a trip that represents the city, it should be compensated 100%. Maybe we don't want to do that 4 times a year, but then even if it's 1 trip a year, it should be compensated 100%. That's just the principle of things.
Right. I mean, and all the other cities do that. I mean, I would say
50%
50% is meaningless. I would say
What's
if
the
you want to do
point?
zero and do it on a case-by-case basis, fine. Or if you want to, adopt what other cities do and do it 100, that's fine. But I think the 50%, is not
Yeah, I
is
agree.
not right.
Either 0 or 100%.
And remember why this 50% was adopted. It was because one council member was abusing travel.
Right. But I mean, it has been enough to get a council member out every now and then, and I really respect Darcy for having, he said, okay, I've got some skin in the game, I want to help manage this cost, but he went and took that 50% and got out and did it. So more power to him. I thought that was appropriate. The policy has worked since we instituted it. What it is, to be exact, is 50% of airfare. Very often, right, in the host city, there's often some accommodation made as part of the travel. And of course, very often the hosts are handling meals and other things, right?
I can tell you in Cupertino, the hotel is not included.
Okay.
We have to pay for the bus from the
Well,
airport
and
to the
I-
city.
So everybody
I have
else,
to
let's
add-
be
And the
clear
me-
that
and the
everybody else in the delegation is paying their own way, right? When our students go
Right.
and they have exchanges,
to add-
their parents are paying.
Let
their
him
own way.
Okay.
finish. Okay.
I spoke to Darcy's wife, in order to be mayor, he had to really give up a lot of his income, and his wife was the one that's bringing home dollars. And I don't know how, having to, yes, he is graciously paying 50%, but then I'm sure his wife is not happy to do that, right?
Well, I mean, just looking over this policy a moment ago, I realized why I didn't put it in a reimbursement for the Japan trip. It's because it's only 50% of one trip every year. So, you know, the second trip I took to Japan wasn't reimbursed. I mean, you know, there are two parts to this, right? There's a cap on the friendship cities, and there's the reimbursement of travel. I mean, to me, the opportunity cost is just, it's so severe that a couple $1,000s for travel is completely de minimis when you compare it to the fact that we get, after taxes, something like $600 or $700 a month, which is, you know, frankly, kind of ridiculous. But, you know, so that extra pay of, you know, $1,000, you know, or $500 for an airfare flight is just like, you know, please. I mean, so.
What is your point?
I would say that we just don't modify it at this point. I mean, it's just very, I mean, it's kind of insulting and minimal, you know, and if it's optically not very
Exactly.
attractive, then just
50% is insulting. Either 0% or 100%. Let's do it case by case.
Well,
But 50% is insulting, like you said.
right. I mean, I would say we just table this and then, you know, move on to the next item. If there are requests in the future for reimbursement, then we can handle it like we handled the trip for the mayor this year.
Could I bring a motion to cap the friendship cities at 10?
I won't second it. I won't vote for that.
Okay.
You won't vote to cap friendship cities?
No, I mean, if we're not going to do the reimbursement, then, you know, let's not change anything in the policy right
Friendship
now.
cities are different than sister cities. This is not, the travel policy is only for sister cities.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I don't know why these two are actually,
you know, kind of
you know,
hodgepodge together.
yeah, exactly, hodgepodge together here anyway.
Yeah, I mean, another way of looking at it is that, you know, again, we've already allocated staff time for Friendship City stewardship that I would dispute is even actually justified, certainly in terms of the number of hours being identified for. I mean, for instance, you know, a lot of our friendship cities, our sister cities weren't notified of this item and the next item. And those committees, my understanding is some of them are kind of, you know, wondering why they didn't get notice. And if something as simple as that notice wasn't done, then why are people spending 10 hours a week or a month on friendship cities? I just don't see it. I mean, having literally set up tables in our EOC for several of those delegations, that yes, I mean, they are imposing upon our time, but in the interest of hospitability and you know, kind of sharing the system that we have, yeah, I'm happy to take the time. I don't see how that allocation was made. So I also don't see that this council will go and approve another 20 friendship cities to bring it up to 30. So I don't see the need to change it at this point, either with regard to the reimbursement or the cap. I'd say, you know, if you're willing to do the reimbursement, let's have a unanimous vote and put a cap on as well. But if there's dissent, you know, it's just, to me, it's not worth it. You know, I mean, we're allocating all this time for staff to be working on this, and they're coming back and saying to us, oh, no, let's not have that, you know. Well, let's put a cap on the number of friendship cities that we service. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't make much sense. And from a fiscal perspective, you know, again, it's one of those things where if you serve, you're already giving up just massive amounts of your time. So, you know, what's the difference in my perspective? And you can do this on a case-by-case basis. If you have a council member or a mayor who's willing to take that time in 1 year, then add it to the budget. You know, it's not something that needs to be adjusted in my view. But if we adjust it, you know, I'd rather that we do it in a uniform manner.
Yeah, I mean, I would say adjust it to 100 or adjust it to 0. Because as the vice mayor said, the 50% of airfare only, you know, it's kind of insulting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe we can table this and bring this back and separate it out into 2 separate things. Because one is sister cities, one is friendships, one's a cap on friendship cities. No one's proposing paying any money for a council member to visit a friendship city. So, you know, I should have caught this when it was put on the agenda and not allowed it to come this way, and I apologize for that, but. I mean,
So,
do we-
Mayor Scharf, the only
Yeah.
reason, again, they came together is that they are part of the same policy.
Right.
So it's policies and guidelines on sister cities, friendship cities, and international delegations. So that's why they came together.
Okay, so we have to vote on everything together.
No, you can break
No.
it out.
Yeah, I mean, but it sounds like Councilmember Paul does not want to limit the number of friendship cities. And I would favor it. I'm not sure about Councilmember Willie or Councilmember Sinks. Would you favor limiting the number to 10 or not?
As I've said, I'm happy with 10, but I also respect what Darcy has to say. I think we have more important business to get onto. It's 12:30 at night, folks.
Well, yeah. Okay, so I guess, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any appetite for approving these updates, so I guess we can just table it, or,
So no action?
right, no action.
On 24 and 25.
No.
No, just 24.
Just 24.
Yeah.
You gotta do 25.
Yeah, we can move on to 25. Renewal and establishment of friendship city relationships. Recommended action, approve renewal of 2 friendship city relationships, including Jilin, China and Tongxiang, China, and establishment of a new relationship with Xianing, China. So is there a staff report?
You just gave it.
Okay, great.
So representatives are, have been invited and are here to speak on this item.
All right, I have 2 speaker cards. Min Song, followed by Susan Gu and Barry Chang. Welcome, Min.
Honorable Mayor and the council member, just to save time, so I'll bring them all together. It will be 3 minutes, okay? Tongxiang, Stephen, you have been there already, right?
Yes.
So that's a good city, has very famous, especially in the high-tech area, okay? They have big data, they're working on that area. And Jilin is on the northeastern part of China, and Susan is here. And we're here just to answer your question, and Shanning is, the mayor has been here, and the vice mayor was here last year, and then the second vice mayor was here just not long ago. Liang have met with them. So, and Shanning is very different, is because it's a very famous Cibi, one of the famous all battleground in China. And then so there's a lot of literature about Shanning. One of the most famous is in Song Dynasty, is Su Dongpo the poem. It's very, very famous. So that's why we're here. If you have any question, otherwise I have the presentation, but that will take too long. Okay, so, and then it's getting late.
Okay, so, yeah, I understand Tongxiang and Jilin. I'm sure I'm pronouncing all these wrong. Xianing, So what is their motivation for becoming a friendship city?
They want to have some exchange, and then they are working on the donation, the library to our library here. A lot of Chinese literature, because that area is famous about this.
So they came to, I think they visited the Cupertino in December, and
December 3rd last year.
former,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
Council Member Barry Chen received them. And then they came to visit last month also, and I took them to the Historical Museum and the Cupertino Library, and they are very interested in having book exchange with Cupertino Library, so they can donate some Chinese books
Right.
to the library. And this is a city that's right outside of the largest city in Hubei province.
Right.
It's right outside of Wuhan.
Wuhan,
So
yes.
it's very similar to Cupertino because we are right outside of San Francisco.
Right.
And it's a kind of suburban, very green city,
Right.
yet it's also close to a metropolitan area.
Right.
And they do have another delegate that they hope to come in September. So it seems they seem to be genuine on building some relationship with
Right.
Cupertino.
All right, finish up, Leon.
Yeah.
And Wuhan is very famous with the fiber optic in China. So in that technology.
Yeah, and the vice mayor
Okay.
that was here, she was very inspired by our historical museum exhibition, and they were very interested in maybe bring that exhibition to China.
Right.
All right, so, I mean, if there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve renewal of the two friendship city relationships, including Jilin, China, Tongxiang, China, and establishment of a new relationship with Xianing, China. Is there any second?
I'll second.
Okay,
So,
can we vote?
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Great,
thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
okay.
Don't stay too late, okay?
So, Madam City Clerk, what would be the procedure if we wanted to postpone items 27 and 28 to a future meeting?
You can simply do that. Do you have a date certain, like just to the next council meeting?
Right, to the
or-
next council meeting.
Then I think that you could, it's probably would be good to get a majority of council to do that.
I concur.
I would rather that we postpone 26 because that was not described properly as we requested from the April 30th meeting. And I would rather that we discuss 28 today because it was proposed because community members would like the city post the meeting material for Regnat Creek Trail earlier when it comes back.
So how
in
many
August.
community members are here to speak on item 26? Okay, so we will not postpone item 26. Okay, so, I mean, can we have a vote to postpone item 27 and 28?
Are you looking for a motion?
Right, a motion, right.
So I would move that we postpone to a future meeting as determined by the mayor and city manager, consideration of 27 and 28.
I second.
Okay, a vote.
Oops.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we are on to item 26, presentation of fiscal year 2019-20 Bike Ped Capital Improvement Program projects, not including Regnart Creek Trail, an amendment of the fiscal year 2019 to 20 capital improvement budget. So can we have the staff report?
Yes, good evening again. Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. I have David Stillman, our Transportation Manager, to my right. Council authorized the CIP on June 18th. It excluded everything but our bike and ped projects. This is just consideration for bike and ped projects absent the Rignart Creek Trail. I want to remind council that our CIP is just, we're just looking for funding for fiscal year 1920 for these projects. You know, we've discussed in past council meetings about getting into a more extended, maybe a 5-year CIP program in the future. That is still a goal of Public Works, but this is just for fiscal year 1920. I just want to be mindful of that. We're not asking for funding beyond those years. Going through the presentation, what we'll be doing is looking at projects that have been funded prior to this current fiscal year. We're going to list the top 10 prioritized projects, both in the bike and the PED plan, so that you can see how they were ranked within those projects. These are the projects that we are currently have funded, and also the active lower priority projects, and give an explanation of why we are doing those now. We're going to go over how they were prioritized. David will. We'll be discussing how the bike and ped plans are envisioned and are a living document that do change over time and are meant to be flexible and updated from time to time. Reasons why projects get redistributed. And then lastly, additional funding needs that we have on a few of our projects. So in this slide we have this. This is just projects that have been funded prior to fiscal year 1920. I can get into as much detail.
Right, it's not necessary to read everything on the slide.
No, and I won't. And I'm not going to go into every detail on these as well. But these are projects that are funded now, like Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 bike lanes. What is funded right now is Wolf to Tantau. That's the Apple portion, but there is the portion that goes all the way from then Wolf to Foothill that is currently not funded, and I can get into when we foresee that coming in future years. The McClellan Road project, we'll talk in detail. That is something that we see some additional dollars going to. And then probably the bicycle wayfinding project is a good one to discuss right now. This is an illustration of the sort of the 7 different neighborhoods that we have for our bicycle boulevard. I think generally phase 1 is this area right here. Phase 2 is generally this area here, and phase 3 is this area here. Now, in the staff report, in fact, you got a corrected desk audit staff report about the Bike Boulevard projects, because this was funded about $1.417 million, and that is for all 3 phases. There are some other ancillary Bike Boulevard projects that are identified in both the Bike and PED plan that aren't part of the first phase 1 through 3, but they're relatively minor. And what we had envisioned with this was we would be doing raised curbs, creating a bulb out, providing refuge for pedestrians, safer travel for bicycles, speed tables, the signage and the pavement markings and whatnot. As you recall, we opened bids, and the bids came in high on the first phase, about 13%. We rejected bids. And what we're proposing is that we complete all of these projects this fiscal year with a more of a temporary style, not utilizing raised curbs, not making drainage improvements that usually accompany putting in those raised curbs, putting in the raised speed tables, and instead of the raised curves, putting in just temporary delineators. They're the short delineators that are flexible, they're low cost, and the signage. So we would do all those things with the exception of the raised curbs and the drainage improvements. And the idea is that we would monitor, we would see how this is working, we would get good input from the residents to know if we need to make any tweaks to it. And then we would come back next fiscal year with the recommendation to do permanent improvements. Now, I do foresee, because of the increased cost of this, that when we come back with that recommendation, that a few more dollars will be needed for this project to get it fully constructed. So that's on the bike boulevard.
Can I clarify? You said phase 1, 2, and 3. How about the segment 7? It's not included in 1, 2, or 3?
That's in 3.
There's a portion of segment 7 that is included within, I believe, phase 1. Most of segment 7 involves improvements such as pavement striping and signage, so it's low-cost improvements that can be done as part of another contract or even done by our own city forces. So it was not included as one of the primary phases.
Okay, so phase 1, the design already finished, went out to bid, but it's the cost will be $3 million, $3.4 million.
No, it wasn't that
or
much. It was like 1.6 million.
1.6 million.
If I recall right. That was the bid, and our estimate
Because I
was-
remember the first draft CIP budget has listed in the future project for Bike Boulevard as 3-point-something million.
I don't recall that.
Yeah. Okay. So originally $1.4 million was for all the phases.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a few outliers that are in the plans that aren't included, but this is the majority of the Bike Boulevard work.
And this part we haven't finished the designing, right?
She
This
asked about
phase
the
2.
design here.
So phase 2 is we haven't finished designing.
We have a conceptual design completed that we've taken to the residents that we've got a good consensus on moving forward with. We haven't done engineering design to the extent that we did for the phase 1 streets, no. But if we move forward with kind of a temporary, the pop-up bulb out kind of solution that we've proposed moving forward with initially for phase 1, then that can be done without putting a full engineering design together.
Yeah, so we can get moving on both phase 1 and 2 relatively quickly. As I understand, in phase 3, there's just some ongoing conversations with the residents as far as what exactly we'll have. We know that that's going to take a little bit longer to do the correct outreach there, but then we'll do the same thing in that area.
Then the full implementation of phase 2, what will be the estimated cost?
I think that one was, there weren't many speed tables involved in phase 2, if I recall. So
No.
the cost was relatively low, like around $75,000 for the temporary.
That's a temporary.
Yes.
But then I think you also proposed a lot of bulb outs in certain areas, right? So what will be the full implementation cost?
Well,
Does any estimate?
yeah, I mean, the first bid came, phase 1 was at 1.6 million. I think our estimate was closer to 1.3 or so. And then the other phases,
Like
full-
13% extra.
Yeah, it was
right? So it's
13%.
not much. So I'm just wondering what will be the estimate of.
For all 3 phases, it likely will be up to around $3 million range by the time we go to full implementation.
For only phase 2?
1, 2, and 3.
Oh, you mean 1, 2, and 3 all together?
Yeah.
Full implementation will be.
Yeah, it could be as high as that, yes.
Okay. And then phase 3, I think this is a project that I really am concerned that it hasn't been even close to completion. This was started this was funded back in 2016, and it's been funded for 2 years. And the website shows the implementation should be done summer 2019, and it's not done. And now we are just learning, okay, we will just do some temporary thing. And this phase 3, I think we haven't even done conceptual design, or have we done that?
We had done conceptual design, and we went out to the neighborhoods with public meetings, and we didn't get a lot of good feedback from the neighbors on the design, so we need to revisit
So when was
the
the neighborhood meeting?
When?
Yeah.
I don't recall. It was last year sometime.
So this Bike Boulevard is the ones that, I think that cover the area, coincide with a lot of safe routes to schools. These are all the school routes, to Monta Vista, to Kennedy. And these are the school routes to Cupertino High. And And this is the school route to Lawson, school route to, so this is what we should be focusing on. This should be the priority of the city. But then from the progress that I see on the website, we haven't done a lot. We are not pushing for this. Other projects took over priority.
But
So
we did have the bid opening, we had high bids, we rejected. We've come up with a plan to get the improvements out in the
yeah,
field sooner
first phase
than
was
not.
only done this year.
Well, no, but
and
what I'm
these
saying
three
is
should all be have been implemented.
Yeah, but I'm saying we're going to be implementing this temporary solution this calendar year, phase 1 and 2, right?
I know.
Sooner than not.
But the original plan, this was funded 2 years ago. The original plan should be getting the final implementation done this year.
Why don't you finish your presentation, then we'll take public comment.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I'd like that, thank you. All right, so moving on down this list, doing the feasibility study, we'll be coming to council September 3rd for that. Una Paracera is funded by Apple, we'll be starting that soon. Rignart Creek Trail, that's scheduled to come in September. The Historic De Anza Trail, UPRR, that's been funded, and we're working on that and looking at some ways to sort of change the formula and how to be negotiating with UPRR. McClellan Road sidewalk installation is substantially complete. That's from San Leandro over to Bern. The Orange and Bern sidewalk installation, the Bern project is out to bid now. We have bid openings on July 30th. And the school walk audit implementation is part of the Apple donation as well. So on this slide, this is just to put it in perspective of what the bike plan's top 10 priority projects are. The far right column is the projects that have either been initiated or not. Stevens Creek Boulevard, I mentioned Wolf to Tantau is initiated. I can get into the details of
Please don't.
Yeah, okay, I won't. And then, so I'll just cover the ones that aren't. I mean, Stevens Creek Boulevard, reconfigure the intersection at Stelling. That will be incorporated with the Stevens Creek improvements when we get down to Stelling, because that's all part of the same project. There's a reason why that's not being moved ahead of the other. As far as
why this hasn't been moved ahead? This is an important intersection.
Please let him finish, and then we'll take questions from
Because a lot of the Anza
council.
College students are using this intersection.
Leon, please let him finish the presentation. You will have time for questions later.
Okay.
Yeah, then the
Comments after that.
Yeah, I think the grade separated at the bottom, that's just to cross over 85. I mean, that is a project that I could see us proposing to do a feasibility study on for next fiscal year. Just continuing on, you can just see the other top 10 projects that are initiated. I think this does show good effort towards those top 10 projects. What here on Finch is that's there at Cupertino High School. Quite a bit of parking impacts will be affected there, but nonetheless, that is an important project to move forward. And I can see that being a high priority next fiscal year. As far as projects that we're working on the bike plan that are active that you could consider are lower priority projects are these. The Carmen, let's see, this is the Carmen Road feasibility study. I mentioned that'll be coming to council in September. I've gone through the Bike Boulevard projects already. As far as the configuring of the intersections, McClellan at De Anza, that is part of the separated bikeways on McClellan Road. And then Wolf at Stevens Creek, again, that's similar to Stelling. That would be done when the improvements on Stevens Creek Boulevard improve to the west. And then just continuing, I won't go through all of these unless there's a desire to, but just other projects, many of them are Apple funded or part of a bike boulevard improvement, like the second row at Greenleaf and Mariani. And then bike lanes, all right. As far as the PED project, again, this project was, the plan was initiated in 2018. So things that we're doing, McClellan Road, as I mentioned, those sidewalks are really complete, just a few punch list items. You've got the sidewalk, McClellan Bonnie Drive, that's being incorporated. I'm sorry, that's not. Will be incorporated into the McClellan Class 4. That's what I thought. So that this really is near to initiation as we proceed our way down McClellan Road, and construction is out there right now. Grade separated crossing, I mentioned that earlier. I see that being a likely project for next fiscal year. Sidewalk, north side. This is part of the McClellan Road project. Okay, so you can see what we're doing. A lot of these are smaller projects. I noted really tied in with the Oaks development that haven't been done yet. For sidewalks, we're moving on the Burn and Orange projects now, and then a Carmen Road, that also is in the top 10, and that will be bringing the feasibility study to council in September. Some lower priority projects that have been moving on the PED plan are these. And really just because there's synergy between other projects, the Anza Boulevard at McClellan, reconfiguring that intersection, that's part of a phasing of the McClellan Road's separated bikeways. Reconfigure the intersection just right out here in front of the Civic Center. That's part of the bikeway project, Bike Boulevard project that was incorporated into that. I talked about the UPRR trail doing the feasibility study. And the last one is more bike boulevards. I'm going to turn it over to David to just talk briefly about how the priorities were set in the respective plans. I think it's interesting how, if you look at there's a band of, just 10 points, priority points within any of the two plans. There's quite a bit of projects. They're tightly banded, and as David goes through how these were prioritized, there's some subjectiveness into this, and I think while things are prioritized for the sake of a list, I mean, the plan is meant to be flexible. So I'll let David take it from here.
Thank you, Roger. So the bike plan, I'll start with describing how the projects in the bike plan were prioritized back in 2016. So each of the projects was ranked with respect to 7 criteria. I'll read those off and describe what they are briefly for you. One being safety. If a project addresses a location with a history of bicycle collisions, it could be awarded up to 20 points. Stress test analysis. Projects that are identified along a high or medium to high stress route. There was an algorithm that the consultant developed that indicated the level of stress a bicyclist would feel along various streets in the city, and where a certain project lied with respect to that heat map, if you will, that was created, they could get a maximum of 5 points. Travel routes to or near schools. If a route connects to a school, it could be awarded a maximum of 20 points. Network connectivity, projects that closes gaps, existing gaps in the bikeway network, could be awarded 15 points. Low stress network improvements, projects that add or upgrade an existing bikeway facility to a lower stress facility could get 20 points. Trip generators and attractors, a project that would connect to employment centers, a retail business center, transit, community service park, etc., could be awarded up to 10 points. And then finally, feasibility or ease of implementation, the ease at which a project can be implemented within a 5-year time frame. The more easily it could be implemented, the higher the number of points that project would be awarded. So these in total could add up to a maximum of 100 points if a project scored the maximum on each category. And as Roger mentioned a few minutes ago, a lot of these are very subjective in terms of how many points a certain project could be awarded within a given category. There isn't a lot of difference between being awarded 15 or 17 points in the safety category. So when we're looking at the overall list that is created just because of the necessity of having a list, a project that ranks 95 is not necessarily a more worthy project than a project that ranks 92 or 93 because of the subjectivity that's involved. And the PED plan was prioritized with respect to 4 criteria, those being schools. So projects that are within a certain proximity of a school or connect to a school could be awarded a maximum of 40 points.
Can I interrupt you? You don't
Yes.
have to read every item on the slide, please.
Okay.
Okay, because the slides are up and we can all see them.
Okay, very.
I completely agree. I mean, I've studied this material. I don't need to be spoon-fed it. We're going on and on and on. I respect the mayor's request to keep this brief.
Very good. So I'll just wrap up this and say that all these the rankings of the projects went through a very public process that involved community, the Bike Ped Commission, staff, consultants, in order to develop the lists that were created. And as this slide indicates, this is an excerpt from the bike plan, that the project list is intended to be flexible and depending upon other projects that are occurring, et cetera, projects can be moved up and down.
Okay.
All right, so this next slide, it just gives an example of how some projects can get moved around after the bike plans were adopted. I won't read through these, or it can come from city council direction. As I went through the other slides, proximity to adjacent higher priority projects, there can be just good economy of scales of why you combine things together. And these are things that will cause different projects to be taken out of turn on a list. But there's very good reasons why we would do that. So the intention of this slide is just to show that with the outside funding, particularly say with Apple that we received, those are also opportunities for us to look at the list and for it to go to different different consideration, including council. So these just go on. Other grants that we have received, things that cause things to move, and this is why it is flexible, and why these plans, and if it shows up on our work plan for 2021 as we would recommend, we would be saying that both the bike and the ped plan needs to be updated by 2021 because changes do occur. So on this slide, there's 3 projects that are existing. Really, Linda Vista Trail is the only project here that's new, and it's on this additional funding needed for 1920. The reasons why the 3 projects need additional dollars, I think it really falls into a couple of reasons. The estimates that were done back when the conceptuals were done and the bike plans were done is they're older. They didn't have escalation in there, and these projects unfortunately didn't have the appropriate soft cost project management, construction management in it. Escalation has been real. We're seeing projects getting more expensive, and so the column to the right is the additional dollars that are needed. Because we've improved, say, the McClellan Road Sidewalk project, we have some very good unit costs for that. We can extend those into Orange and Byrne. Once we have the bid opening on Byrne on the 30th, we'll have that much more confidence about the dollars that are needed, but we see this amount now. We see building and obligating those dollars in fiscal year 19 and 1920. That's why we're being transparent. We see these dollars needed now because we're going to get the project built now. I'll skip Linda Vista Trail, cut back to it. McClellan Road Bike Corridor. We've done we've already bid out phase 1A, 1B. So costs are coming in. We know exactly where we're at, and we're looking at additional dollars of $240,000 to finish it, and that includes going all the way out here to our doorstep here at Torrey. With that includes the intersection at De Anza and McClellan Creek Trail. But it would make the trail very usable nonetheless. And the work that we would be proposing for the 595 would really be make-ready work for a future project that could make it into that multi-use path, in the future. I think on this slide, just to give an idea of where this is at, and I'm sure council knows why we're looking at this. We have a resident who's willing to donate this property for this use if we can obligate the funds and do this yet this calendar year. There's good connectivity of this. That's why it was foreseen in these different plans, whether it's to Linda Vista Park here on the bottom of the screen or to the existing Stevens Creek Trail at the McClellan Ranch Preserve to the north. It does provide some nice connectivity, and it is a good opportunity, and that's why it's on the list that we would like council to consider. Just took a few snapshots of how this looks. What we're doing for that value is we're doing some grading to provide some grade differential between the proposed footpath and people's backyards, to where we generally have about up to say 8 feet differential, so it creates some privacy. It would do some fencing, say some split rail fencing around the outside slope. It would not do any improvements at the crossing at McClellan itself. There would just be a metal barricade there that would direct people to go west up towards Linda Vista. So it doesn't do improvements across McClellan itself. It would just be some signage, so it would be very, very minimal, but respectful of the people who live adjacent to the trail. And this is just a wrap-up of the McClellan Road project that I could get into details if you'd like. You know, this slide just shows the different segments of that trail. Council has seen that in the past. And this is the slide I went to right away. Recommended actions you're aware of, and so David and I are here available for any questions you have.
Okay, so before I go to the many, many cards I have on Linda Vista Trail, Madam City Attorney, can we kind of poll the council members to see where they stand on the Linda Vista Trail? And maybe we don't, I don't know how that works
You
legally.
still need to take public comment, and you can change the order of when you want to do that. But, but
Right, I'm willing to take public comment, but, I know
if you want to
if
have
there's a
some
general
discussion
consensus that
beforehand.
everyone is in favor of funding the Linda Vista Trail, we may not have to have everyone.
If you want to have
speak.
some discussion before the public comment, you may do that.
Okay, all right, that's what I would like to do, have some discussion before the public comment. Now, I would not want to lose this land donation or lose the opportunity for this to be a trail, a plain trail at first, maybe a multi-use path later. So I would favor that $595,000. Does anyone else have comments on that?
Go ahead.
I have related questions to this. So we received an email from a nearby resident this evening, and he has a few concerns. One is the fact that the trail itself is not being locked to inaccessibility at night. Is that correct? For Linda Vista.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a provision to have gates on it on
Okay.
either side.
So just, it will adjoin some residences in the backyard over the fence, and so in the evening, people would technically be able to get onto that trail behind people's homes. Is that-
Yeah, it would be signed closed, similar to our parks, but
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so another one of the concerns stated in this email was having to do with privacy and how that could be assured without having really a good set of plans to get a sense of, whether that privacy would in fact be, the concern would be alleviated from a $590,000 plan. I mean, is there some kind of plan to excavate a certain amount of the surface, and how can we give our resident that assurance that they will have that acceptable level of privacy without having more of a detailed plan here?
that's a good question. There's been some discussion with residents along the trail and an understanding that we need to lower the grade to get that 8-foot height differential from the proposed footpath elevation to their backyard, so people aren't just looking into their backyard as we do it. We've also plugged in dollar amounts to do privacy fencing and to replace fencing that has failed through there. That's in the estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't say it's along the whole path, but I mean, because we've talked with the residents out there, we have a good feel of what the needs could be.
Okay, so how deep are we leveling off the ground there in order to?
I spoke to Chad about it. I mean, it's 2 to 3 feet in some areas. It's to where we're not really causing a retaining wall to be needed. It narrows the width of the existing trail, if you want to call it that now, but it still maintains generally at least something that's 8 feet wide, even after even after we've done the grading to lower it.
Right.
Because you can imagine you're going to be chasing a toe of the slope as you go down, but we'll still have that.
Right. And remind us about how long the trail is from McClellan Road over to the entrance
It's
of
around
Linda Vista.
1,700 feet. if I
1,700
recall.
feet, okay, so roughly a quarter of a mile, right, okay. So, a final question I had to do with the contention of this resident that you would basically have people crossing over from McClellan Ranch directly over to what is essentially this trailhead, as opposed to going up the road on McClellan and finding the suitable crosswalk. And this was a safety concern as well, because, you know, apparently this is not too far away from the hairpin loop that goes, I think, off to the west on McClellan. And so do we have any thoughts on how to kind of prevent that so-called jaywalking from happening and, you know, assuring the safety of people that are using this to connect to McClellan Ranch?
Yeah, and you know, all of you who have visited McClellan Ranch Preserve, you know it's a difficult area right there just because of the grade difference. So there'll be a physical barrier where the trail, we'll call it a trail, the footpath head is there at McClellan that will be, you know, about 4 feet high right at the back of the curb where the sidewalk is there, that just has a sign that says no crossing, you know, and to go west to go east to Linda Vista. I mean, so that's what's included in this improvements now. There's not a treatment to provide a crossing there at this time.
Okay, and how far east do they have to go in order to get to the Linda Vista crosswalk?
It is a half a block, I'd say. Yeah, I mean
Okay, so a couple minutes at the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, probably, 3 or 4 minutes of a walk, you'd be up to Linda Vista.
Linda Vista, okay. Is there anything that we could do besides that sign and, you know, kind of a brief barrier to encourage people to make that walk up to Linda Vista? And then
Oh, you have any ideas?
I imagine you can't really put a barrier all the way through, but
Yeah, I mean, you could put a barrier for a short distance to encourage people to start heading that way. You're right, you wouldn't be able to do it the entire distance. That would be somewhat impractical. But you could also potentially improve a crossing at the location. If people are going to cross there, do what we can to make it a safe crossing location.
right, is that even possible at grade to make it a safe crossing?
It'd be a rapid flashing beacon.
It would be a high visibility crosswalk, pedestrian actuated beacon, that sort of thing.
And about how much would that add to the budget if we were estimating it at this time?
20,000.
Okay. All right, yeah, those are my questions. I would generally be supportive of this allocation. And, you know, I appreciate the fact that you brought it down from 2 some odd million. And hopefully we don't run into any really prohibitive, you know, kind of structural problems, you know, a couple $100,000 in. But if it seems like spending this in this current, you know, fiscal cycle will get you to the point where you have that connector made and ready to have some future improvement, then I'm in support of it.
Following similar question line, I checked out the location. At that location, because people are driving pretty fast. But then I checked the Google Earth today. There seems to be a crosswalk close to the parking lot we are building right now. Right, very close to the McClellan Ranch. Wouldn't that crosswalk be closer to than the Linda Vista Trail?
Yeah, I think Clubhouse Lane you're referring to at that
So why are you
Yes.
not using that?
Yeah, that
Is it
crosswalk could
because
be
there
used,
is-
yes.
Or
Yeah.
is it because there is no sidewalk? I'm just curious.
Are we able to
There
do it?
is sidewalk. I kind of try.
Yeah, we're not
Is
able
there
to
no
do it.
sidewalk there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and that is the reason. There's not a.
There is no sidewalk from that
Well, there's a-
crosswalk to
well, there's the bridge.
trail entrance.
Yeah. and
There's a
it's-
bridge, right?
Yeah, and
The bridge is the issue.
And you'd say, yeah, we'll just put in a sidewalk, but there's the bridge, and there's just not the width in
But
the
I guess
bridge.
south side of that McClellan Road doesn't have a sidewalk from the crossroads to the trailhead.
That's correct.
That's
So
the
right now,
problem.
we're just trying to pull
Okay.
what support we have for the Linda Vista Trail.
So, okay, so for this one, my concern for this is we have invested, the city has invested a lot of dollars in that area. We bought 4 properties to expand the McClellan Ranch area. The Seaver, and then the parking lot that we are building right now was a property, and 2 properties along Stevens Creek. We spent a lot. And then plus improvement for the McClellan Ranch, the building, and Blackberry Farm. A lot of investment already on a very nice area. It already has a lot of very good trails. One more thing, of course, it's very nice. It's nice to always have one more extra trail, but at the same time, we are not fully funding the inclusive playground. We are asking the community members to fundraise. To provide inclusive playground, they all have to fundraise for $1 to $2 million in order to have a $5 million inclusive playground. And for the library expansion, the estimated cost is $8.5 million. And we are asking the community members to fundraise $3.5 million, and we only fund $5 million. So for an area that we already invested in millions and millions of dollars, should we invest more? Just because this property that the person donated, the person could have given the city an opportunity to just purchase the property. The assessed value would be about $60,000. But instead of offering the city the opportunity to purchase and then decide how to improve it and when, the donor is trying to manipulate the city funding process to say you have to fund it this year. In the area, you have to use our city dollars on an area to provide more walking paths in an area that already
we were
has
asked for a
walking
poll,
Right, so
not a rant.
Councilmember Sinks, what is your?
So my
view on this?
proposal is,
Well, I think we need to hear from the public, honestly.
Right, okay, Council.
I'm generally
Okay.
positively disposed toward this,
Okay.
but I think it is disrespectful for us to go on and on and on and on
Right, I
without
was-
hearing from the public.
right, I was trying
We're supposed
to-
to keep open minds until we deliberate.
I was trying to get
we
a
are trying
sense,
to pull.
just so
I
maybe not
support-
everybody
I
wants.
support bike and pedestrian trails in general, and I would be thrilled to hear from the people that are most
Okay,
concerned
so I
about
have
it before
about-
I deliberate.
I have about 25,
I support bike
Cards
pedestrian
here.
trail, but I'm concerned, how come we are not asking for funding for bike boulevard?
Okay.
Which support routes that leads to schools, to Monta Vista, to Kennedy, to Cupertino High.
that's not what we're talking about here.
But then they are, no, here is where
So-
we are asking for funding, extra funding for existing funded projects.
Well,
I
you can
see
vote against
requests
this.
for all the other projects, but I don't see requests for additional funding for bike boulevard projects. Why?
Okay, so I'll start with Subra Kumarswamy, followed by Andrea Stawicki, followed by Larry Dean. Welcome, Subra. Are you still
Thank you for
here?
the opportunity, and I know it's late and I want to keep it brief. I live about half a mile from the location, been there for 15 years. I use the Blackberry Farm extensively. My kids, they cross country from Mount Setting, they run the trail all the time. So I would be very, very excited to use this trail. So I really want to, get all your support, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Andrea Stawicki, followed by Larry Dean, followed by Tim Wee. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly.
Oh, I did, wow.
It
amazing.
rarely happens.
Can you say it again?
No,
And
I can't.
Stawicki. Andrea Stawicki. Yes. I'm a local resident, and I'm a member of the board of the Friends of Stevens Creek Trail. And I am obviously supportive of this generous gift and hope that the council will consider it. And so that is my support. But I would like to read a short letter that we received from a couple who lives on the trail, who back onto this trail. And they just wanted to say they're 60-year residents of 10711 Ray Lane, and our property abuts the proposed Linda Vista Trail. In general, we wholly support the development of this potentially great asset to our immediate community as it will encourage a healthy lifestyle, get people out of their cars, and make our neighborhood even safer. Our concern is primarily about maintaining our privacy and personal security, and trust that design and implementation will maintain or improve those issues with the new trail. We trust that the implementation process will keep us up to date and include us in the feedback process to accommodate any safety and property concerns that we have. Thank you for having the vision and foresight to invest in our community and neighborhoods. And it's signed Ed and Joan Ramage, whose property abuts the trail. And I would like to give you
Great,
this.
yeah, you can
Thank
give
you.
that to the clerk. Thank you. Larry Dean, followed by Tim Wee, followed by Nika Tafik-Bakash. I'm sure I did that wrong, but welcome, Larry.
Good evening. My sleeping bag's in the corner. As a resident, for my wife and I, we're 25-year residents of the Ray Lane area and have been in Monte Vista for going on 40 years. We currently live about 50 yards from the Linda Vista Trail. We wholly support this development of this potentially great asset to our immediate community, as it will encourage healthy lifestyle, get people out of the cars, and make our neighborhoods even safer. Thank you for having the vision and the foresight to invest in the community. On behalf of the board of Walk by Cupertino, the 20 members of the board, we'd like to thank staff and the city leaders and let you know that Walk by Cupertino and its nearly 2,000 members support the staff's plan for this next year. It's very important. We're at the end of a 5-year period of going from a zero base to developing a formal plan with professional processes and transparency. And we're now at an inflection point. You can see it with McClellan Ranch. And in the next 5 years, with the leadership with our new city manager, Deb Fang, I know that Cupertino is going to be a poster child for safe and easy walking and biking in the community. We're doing some really great things. Stay the course. We'll support you. Our community is very important, very interested, and really focused on how the city continues to lead us in this effort. So thank you so much for your leadership and your help. It's all good stuff. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Larry. Next is Tim Wee, followed by Nika, followed by Shiv Shah. Welcome, Tim, and welcome back from your cross-country bike ride.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and City Council members, my name is Tim Wee. I'm the president of the Friends of Stevens Creek Trail. On behalf of our 400 trail friends who live in Cupertino and our board of directors, the Friends of Stevens Creek Trail would like to approve funding for a trail to connect Linda Vista Park to McClellan Ranch Park and Blackberry Farm, allowing Cupertino residents near both to get to the other parks by walking instead of driving, and connecting Cupertino's beautiful emerald necklace of parks. Additionally, 63 residents signed an online petition to support the Linda Vista Trail. Here are a few of their comments. Chances like this rarely occur. Please take advantage of what may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Long overdue! Exclamation point. This would be a wonderful enhancement for Cupertino. The best parts of Cupertino are the natural spaces with public access. We must preserve these spaces to educate our kids about the importance of nature. We live near the Blackberry Farm and really enjoy the trail every day. My kids love to bike around and my 80-year-old parents love to exercise in the park. Thanks for considering extending the trail to provide more beautiful time for residents to enjoy outdoor and be healthy and happy each day. We got dozens of other supportive comments as well. Furthermore, it is our understanding that most, if not all, of the homeowners along the Linda Vista Trail support this trail. This is amazing. We encourage you to think globally and act locally to bring more trails to Cupertino for your residents and especially for your kids. Our kids are counting on us to help our world be beautiful and healthy. Trails are a great way to improve our communities as well as save our world, reducing climate change, reducing traffic congestion, getting people into nature in their own neighborhoods, and encouraging exercise and a healthier lifestyle. The land that is being donated to Cupertino for this trail is not a huge amount, but it is very strategically located and was a challenge to acquire. The trail is a bargain as well as a rare opportunity for Cupertino. Take advantage when opportunity knocks. Please approve funding for the Linda Vista to McClellan Ranch Trail. Your staff and BPC worked hard to come up with the best plan. Follow the recommendations. By the way, we had many more speakers lined up to speak in favor of Linda Vista, but the length of this meeting exceeded their willingness to stay so late. Thank you.
Yeah, my willingness to stay this late is also waning.
I'm with you.
Nika, followed by Shiv Shah, followed by Michael Stanek. Is Nika still here? No. How about Shiv Shah? No. Michael Stanek. Carol Stanek. Oh, wow, we're going really fast through these. Gary Shamshoian? No. Satpal Dalal? Samuel Feldman? Okay, we got a winner.
Who's after Samuel?
Samuel, followed by Louis Bueller. Is Louis still here? Followed by Garth Williams. Is Garth still here? Okay, welcome, Samuel.
Hi.
No, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Samuel Feldman. I'm a longtime Cupertino resident. I will try to keep this as short as possible. I want to start by saying that the existing Stevens Creek Trail extension that we put in several years back that runs between Stevens Creek Boulevard and McClellan Road has really turned out to be a splendid addition to the city's outdoor spaces. So we have to keep that in mind. I walk it frequently. I can tell you it's a very popular destination. We have a special opportunity here to extend the existing popular trail. Not only simply adding to its length, but also connecting it to Linda Vista Park. Right? This may be one of the city's underutilized parks. So let me also show you the view from this proposed trail. Let's see, can you see that? Kinda. You've got kind of a reflection there. Hold on. All right, that's from the old Hall Road, looking out over the golf course. So it's a beautiful view. And so the trail will have its own aesthetic value, just the trail itself. By making the connection between these parks, these two parks, we're going to leverage both the existing park and the trail and adding to the value of all the assets. So I feel it's important to not let this opportunity slip by us. I ask you to approve the proposed funding for this extension.
Okay, thank you. Louis Bueller, followed by Garth Williams, followed by Hung Wei, followed by Ann Ing. Welcome, Louis.
Hi, Mayor and council members. My name is Luis Bueller. I am a...
Sorry.
I'm a Cupertino resident and a past chair of the Cupertino Park and Rec Commission. And I want to thank the council for giving us this opportunity to reconsider in a different form the extension of the Stevens Creek Trail from McClellan Ranch to Linda Vista Park. Since the June 18 council meeting when this came up, my wife and I have spent 3 separate evenings, about an hour and a half each, on the trail that currently runs through Blackberry Farm and McClellan Ranch Park. And we've had many conversations with Cupertino residents about the opportunity to extend the trail all the way to Linda Vista Park. Over 130 Cupertino residents signed a petition asking the council to open the trail that would connect McClellan Ranch to Linda Vista Park. And in those conversations, we received many positive comments. The overwhelming sentiment is that residents would like to see a longer trail than the one that is currently in use. When people heard that the land was being donated, we got comments like, this is a no-brainer, we should do this. But the most encouraging response that we got was that people thanked us for taking the time to tell them about the upcoming council decision and to give them a voice in the process. So I'm here tonight to submit to you the petitions we gathered in support of opening the trail. I have them here. You can sort of see they're all here. I'd like to give them to the clerk and make them available, Mr. Mayor, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great.
How many signatures altogether do you have?
So there were 130 Cupertino residents, more than 130 who signed. And they're different than, I mean, it's a different process than the online petition you heard about. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to add just one other point, and that is that after spending time on the trail, it became very clear to me and my wife that Blackberry Farm and McClellan Ranch are much more than just neighborhood parks. Even today, in their existing situation, they draw a wide group of users from throughout the city. By connecting these parks to Linda Vista and making it a greater system, you're going to expand the use even more across the city to make this a real asset for our community. So to close, I want to thank the staff for putting forward a cost-effective alternative to open the trail, express my support for that and the support of the more than 130 residents that signed these petitions. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Garth Williams, followed by Hung Wei, followed by Ann Ing, followed by Steve Garrity. Welcome, Garth. Is Garth here? No. Hung Wei, welcome.
Who's after that?
After Hung Wei is Ann Ing. Is Ann still here? Great. Okay, and then Steve Garrity. Welcome, Hung.
I'm Hung Wei, resident of Cupertino for 29 years. I promised to read 2 letters, but Darcy has already mentioned one of them, and the concerns of the neighbors are of privacy, safety, and also the safety crossing on McClellan Road. So I think you have already answered some questions, and also I believe our council and our city staff will work with the neighbors to make sure that these things are satisfactory to the neighbors. And I know, especially for John, the neighbors' residents' approval and is very important. So I trust our cities will work closely with them. I'd like to answer a couple questions about the integrity of the person who's donating this land. We live in Cupertino. We have generous people, and I want to tell you this person is a generous person. And as for we're fundraising for libraries, we are all behind it. Every citizen in Cupertino will fundraise for our library, and will fundraise for other projects. I understand we have limited resources, but you know, when an opportunity comes, as some of the residents said, we should take it. And I don't believe this person is trying to manipulate the city. And I really want to say that when we get donations, it's really of good intention. So maybe it's not what some council members are looking for, but if we have the opportunity, if we have money, please do it. And then I know economic development is very important for our city, and every resident really is standing behind all the projects in Cupertino. I'm hoping that we can all work together and make things happen. And we are standing behind the library, we're standing behind trails, we're standing behind economic development. And for example, this hotel that we just approved, it will bring $1.8 million community benefit. We can use it to do trails, to do libraries. So I believe as council members, economic development to bring more resources to our city is an important job of yours. And I hope we can all work together and make our city a rich and great place to live. Thank you.
Great. Ann Ing, followed by Steve Garrity, followed by Lawrence Fawn. Welcome, Ann.
Good morning, council members. I'm Ann Ing. I've been living at 6031 Bollinger Road on the east side of Cupertino for 40 years. And my primary vehicle is a bicycle. So you should not be surprised that I'm supporting all the bike projects that will be funding tonight, I hope. But especially I'm here for the Stevens Creek Trail, which I've been a fan of it since Mountain View first paved the levee in 1990. And it's worked its way down. And I joined the board of the Friends of Stevens Creek Trail just not long before Cupertino opened its first 2/3 of a mile, and then a couple years later finished. There was a mile. There's been a mile now for about 10 years, and now we have an opportunity to add another 1/3 of a mile to it, which will make it a more interesting trail, more of a destination. It'll open up Linda Vista Park to a bunch more people. So I hope that you will just seize the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Steve Garrity, Lawrence Fawn, Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. Steve Garrity, Vice President and Friends of Stevens Creek Trail. I was here last month to support further development of Linda Vista and hopefully also its use as Stevens Creek Trail, an extension thereof. I came here tonight just to refresh that support and also endorse the comments you've heard from our other supporters and members from the board as well. I hope you can see that there's overwhelming support to do this Linda Vista project, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Great, thank you for being brief. Lawrence Fawn, followed by Jennifer Griffin. Is Lawrence here? No, Jennifer Griffin, welcome. And that's the last card.
Good evening. Good morning, City Council. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and I will tell you right now that the Linda Vista Trail looks like a really good thing to get. I will tell you, though, that coming down that hill, we drive that route every Saturday or Sunday, and we go see the bear. And coming down that hill or going up the hill by Deep Cliff, people do pick up speeds in a car, and whatever's going on with the crosswalks down there, you probably need to do something to reduce the traffic speeds before you come to that crosswalk, if that's where you want people to be crossing to go on to the Linda Vista Trail. Also, I'll tell you that I'm very nervous about some of the proposed bike separation things that are going on Stevens Creek. As we've discussed earlier tonight, there is a tremendous amount of demand for lanes on Stevens Creek Boulevard. Take the median, take every lane, do things with it. And I know the city staff has been working on this, but I'm very concerned about what's happening between Tantau and Wolf. I hope that we're not going to be having bike lanes going into the public right-of-way. We're not going to be cutting tree roots. Main Street was just put in. I have no idea how that's going to be handled. And we've also got the new IHOP hotel. The second tower of the cruise ship is going in at IHOP, and we've got that Stern Hotel, so it's complete bedlam down there. So, and there has been issues with the bicycle boulevards on the east side. We need to have more discussions with it. The staff has been respectful and realized that there are a lot of issues there. You are 1/2 mile into a dense neighborhood, and having the local bicycle club with 20 people riding down in the middle of a 1/2 mile into a residential neighborhood is probably not a really good place for them. I think it's much better if they're out on Stevens Creek Boulevard or down at Shoreline. But anyway, I think everybody's trying to work on this, but I would rather, if push comes to shove, I would rather have the bicycle groups going down Stevens Creek Boulevard than in my neighborhood. We're just not set up for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So that's the end of the public comment. So I'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Willie, do you have anything?
Try to be brief, but it'd be nice if life was always just very easy and straight and narrow, but that's not usually the way things play out. And so when there's a case like this where something crops up and it looks like it'd be really good for the community and there's a lot of community support, virtually no negative that goes along with it. And the city is in very good financial position, so I do think we need to take advantage of this while it's available. So I support it.
Great. Wait, no, we're going to go in order. Councilman Paul? Okay. Vice Mayor Chow?
The city, I think according to the budget presentation last time, we are facing structural deficit in 3 to 5 years. We are going to have, our expenses are going to outgrow our revenue. And the amount of dollars we have, spare dollars we have every year is going to decrease, and then it's going to become negative. And then we still have the city hall we need to pay for somehow, and the memorial park pond still needs to be renovated, and then the Lawrence Mitty Park, even the city already allocated dollars for Lawrence Mitty Park, it still needs at least a few $1 million to get improvement on that park. And the service center we have on Merritt Avenue also needs to be renovated, and it also has seismic problem. And the Stevens Creek Corridor Master Plan will come up where we might need to look at how to redo the Blackberry Golf Course. And the Park and Recreation Master Plan, which we are finishing, is going to have a lot of things that we need to implement. And plus, we have implementation of bike plan project. There are like the Bike Boulevard project. We know that the $1.4 million allocated is not enough. And I'm very surprised the staff is not asking for additional dollars for Bike Boulevard project, because those are the paths that's used by students every day to go to school. I'm surprised Walk and Bike Cupertino is not asking the city to fund this project that actually leads to schools. Plus, we might need to consider funding for affordable housing and for inclusive playground. All of this is coming up, and we are facing budget deficit. It's really nice, of course, to spend more and more. We build this, we add more of this trail, that trail. It's very nice. I would like to have that. But there has to be a priority. What do we put as priority? I would like to propose that staff give us an estimate how much dollars we need for Bike Boulevard. That has to be much higher priority than any of the other projects that I see on the list. Because that one was funded 2 years ago. It hasn't been finished. We keep adding new projects.
Right, so the permanent build-out of the Bike Boulevard project will be next fiscal year. You'll see that in the CIP request.
Why next fiscal year? Why are we not requesting?
Because we're putting in all
now?
the temporary improvements that I discussed this fiscal year. That'll give everyone an opportunity, the residents, to really tell us how they feel about that, how the cycling and pedestrians feel about that. We anticipate some changes. That'll be important input into the design, and then we'll implement that design next fiscal year.
Because some of these funding that you are requesting, they are not, the constructions are not even going to be done this fiscal year. For example, I think the third phase of McClellan Road, right, between Sterling and De Anza. Does that cost include the possible purchase of right-of-way?
Yeah, I don't believe there's an allowance for right-of-way in those estimates. It's all based on construction.
Yeah, so that still has challenges to be resolved, right? So
At the
even that,
intersection,
we don't even know if we might do
on the northwest
construction
corner,
next year.
that is a challenge at that intersection.
Yeah, so that's something we don't know if we'll do construction this year. However, you are requesting funding now. So I don't understand how come you are not requesting funding for Bike Boulevard, which is also a very important project.
Well, I've described our plan on the Bike Boulevard project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also you fail to recognize why are we discussing this CIP project now, not back in June? It was because on April 30th, the council agreed that we would like to re-examine the priorities of all the bike path projects before we decide on funding. But today we are not really even talking about that. We are given a list of projects, and then now I'm proposing we should prioritize something else, but then that cannot even be considered. For me, I would like to prioritize the intersection of Stevens Creek and Stelling, because that's an intersection that's used by many De Anza students. I would like to prioritize safety improvement for De Anza and Stevens Creek, because I see bicyclists cutting through traffic to go left, do left turn every day. And these things are not being prioritized.
But those signal improvements will recognize the separated bikeways that will be going down Stevens Creek Boulevard. So they'll need to happen in conjunction and coordinated with the separated bikeways that go through. I mean, the signal will be modified to where it'll recognize bicycles that are there, but if the separated bikeways aren't there yet, then it becomes problematic.
No, I think you can improve the intersection without separating the bikeway. So I think I would like in August, let's talk about the priority of all the bike path project in August, so that it's not only a limited list that's presented to the council, and then we are simply asked to rubber stamp. And then one thing that you presented, the Common Bridge, you said, okay, some projects are reprioritized, they are moved up because of the council direction. No, it was put on the council agenda as a revised budget, and the council approved that revised budget. But the fact is, who inserted that into the revised budget? What public process did it go through? Who proposed it in the first place? A council member, community member?
I believe it happened through council that we were asked to include that in the budget.
Where? Which meeting the council asked
we'd have to look
it
at
to
that
be included?
Attachment D
the
to
first time, as far as I know, the first time it was put on the council agenda was the agenda where the council approved the revised budget. So there is no process, for example, for a community member or even a council member who would like to propose a certain project to have higher priority. That process is not clear.
Yeah, I know that council authorized it back in March of 2018 to proceed with the Carmen Road feasibility study.
Yeah, but that's the first time it was on the council agenda.
Well,
who proposed that?
Yeah, I mean, something precipitated it being there.
Yeah, so who proposed that?
I'd have to go back.
I mean, I don't recall who proposed that.
Yeah, no one proposed it. It just all of a sudden appeared.
How is this germane to the question before us tonight?
It has
if I
to
might
do
ask,
with,
because it's now nearly 2 a.m.
Yeah, so, okay. So this is something I would like to get clear answer on in August when the process needs to be transparent so that every community member and every council member and even commissioner know how a project gets reprioritized, moved up.
Well, you know,
when other projects are pushed down, like Bike Boulevard project has been pushed down because other projects has been keep adding to the list.
This evening, because I did understand the desire to look at the prioritizations, and that's why I presented it the way that we did, where, you know, how it was ranked in top 10, both bike and ped, the active projects that are lowerly ranked. That's why we did what we did today. Now, as far as the 2016 bike plan and the 2018 ped plan, I mean, that went through a very transparent process that was long and involved. As I mentioned before, we're looking at re-upping those plans through our work plan in 2021. We're only looking to fund for this current fiscal year. We're not looking at out years. So if you're wanting to reprioritize that in August. I mean, you would need to go
I'm
through.
not asking to reprioritize that. What I'm asking is, the council has, what you presented, you didn't list all of these projects that were skipped. You listed some lower priority projects. Those are all the projects that have been moved up. So a lot of projects that were skipped, like the Sterling Road bike path on the Anza, these are all skipped.
Are you looking at attachment A and B?
This is attachment A, the
Okay.
pedestrian bike plan.
Okay, right, that's attachment A,
Yeah.
and that's just the prioritized list directly from
Yeah.
the bike plan.
So
There's nothing
I'm-
skipped there.
So some things are skipped, and this is what we need to look at. Okay, so we should take a look at this in August. So what I hope to propose for today is, I would like to see funding for Bike Boulevard project allocated, so that, because you already have a cost estimate for phase 1 and 2. Let's allocate that. And then for the Linda Vista Trail, I propose the city fund the $300,000 for that trail. Since the trail has a lot of support, it will benefit many people. That's fundraise. Show that you really support the project. And the city fund $300,000, just like the city funded only $5 million out of the $8.5 million for library, even though library will benefit so many people. So that's my proposal.
Hi, can I?
Okay, Rod, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. So I note that going back a long number of years, it's been the aspiration of many people in the city to extend the Stevens Creek Trail. In fact, we had a proposal on the table a few years ago to put in a housing development just beyond the urban boundary in exchange for getting the right to build a trail, all the way to Stevens Creek Park, the county park. I was thrilled with the idea, and I still am. I note that on Foothill Boulevard, in the road that we have a lot of trucks on going to Stevens Creek Quarry, we've had bicycle deaths. If we were able to fulfill the vision of getting first to Linda Vista now, and then getting somehow in the future all the way up to Stevens Canyon Reservoir there, the park there, I think we would have done a once-in-a-generation kind of improvement in the connectivity of our urban area to that marvelous open space that we have to enjoy. As for transparency and process, boy, we've had a heck of a lot of it. We've talked about it again and again and again. I will point out that it's been nearly 5 years since Ethan Wong died biking to Monte Vista High School. I am thrilled that we finally have a protected bikeway under construction right now in that very segment where he perished. That was a real tragedy and fueled efforts by the prior council to get an activist bike ped commission to put together a real plan, an ambitious plan, our 2016 bike plan, passed by this council unanimously. That plan, when it's fully implemented, I believe, will interconnect this city in ways that will really make this one of the most walkable, bikeable cities in Silicon Valley. Now, this particular trail, you say its value on the tax roll is $60,000, could be. But there's only one haul road that has any possibility of connecting Linda Vista Trail to the rest of it. So what's the value of a parcel that you can't obtain if it's made of inobtainium? If we let this offer expire, we may not have that opportunity again, ever again. So I feel like we didn't have to trade, frankly, right? For some of my colleagues, it was a real dilemma to think about expanding the urban growth boundary, but we would have gotten a trail for it. Now we're getting part of that trail at almost no cost. I'm grateful to city staff for having figured out how to engineer this for a reasonable price. I am most grateful to the holder of this land who, having been a council member himself, recognized the real value of the parcel. I don't know how he did the deal to get it. I haven't heard that story. But this is really a generous gift. And I'll tell you another generous gift. Given all the noise that we have on other bikeways in the city, here we have a hearing where not one person has come to tell us how terrible it is. Yes, we did receive an email with a little concern. I'm hoping we can allay that concern. But I know the individual that owns this property and bought it and traded it and so forth, whatever he had to do, went to all the residents that backed up to the trail and said, what would it take for you to be happy with this? So he created a plan working with city staff about how much grading would be necessary to keep it out of their view shed. I really, I'm thrilled because the community is going to get something that has a price tag I'd have a hard time actually putting a number on for a song. And this will be to the benefit of everybody who chooses to live and bike and walk in Cupertino for generations to come. So I'm obviously beyond this plan. I'm thrilled with the whole thing and happy to support it. I would say, to Darcy's point, I'm just looking at a Google Earth map of Google map of the current crosswalk, and I'm sensitive to the fact that, you know, putting too many crosswalks in the same little segment may make a driver more, may make it easier for a driver to ignore the second one that the driver comes across. And I'm wondering if it makes any sense to take the current crosswalk and move it to align with this new trail segment, which seems to go, more or less straight into the parking lot. If it would make sense to simply say, rather than put it in the bottom of the dip, would it make sense not to just add another one, but move the one we have? And then, yes, there's some barriers and other things. I bike and walk this regularly, so I'm generally familiar. But do something that would be protective of, a jogger or somebody who's wanting to proceed rapidly through with maybe blinking lights or whatever. I mean, you have standards for this, right? And you can deem how appropriate this is. But I think for accessibility between this area and the neighborhood around Linda Vista, this is going to be a real godsend. So that'd be my
So
my
that
question.
crosswalk will be, I thought about moving that crosswalk, but it would appear right after a turn. So you need to be really careful.
All right, and that's why we have professionals in the city. We don't have to
Yeah.
micromanage this, but I would be supportive of an extra allocation of, if you think it's $20,000 to make that happen as well.
Correction, I think I checked the bike
I'm not
path
done yet.
on Lintavit.
You had your turn? Thank you. So, in conclusion, I hope we can pass this plan tonight, and I'm ready to make a motion.
I'd have a correction. Linda Vista Park does not have any trail that goes to Stevens Creek Reservoir. Right now, it goes nowhere. It
But
just goes to Linda
yes, I
Vista
made that
Park.
point.
Yes.
Okay. And also, please don't use Ethan Wang as any reason to support this Linda Vista Trail. I know Ethan Wang personally. We go to vacation with their family every year. This is something that affects me personally. Linda, his accident was because of routes to schools that was not safe. And what I've observed is these routes, Bike Boulevard, these routes that's near Cupertino High, Finch, they are not being prioritized by the city. Yes, we have implementation, McClellan Road will become safer. But how about all the other on-street bike paths that's used by our students every day? This past council did not put priority on those bike paths. That's what I'm fighting for now. You keep adding this trail, that trail. Those trails, they don't actually lead to schools. The trails that actually lead to schools, you guys are not implementing them. I printed the safe routes, suggested routes to schools for Monta Vista, for Kennedy, for Lawson, for Cupertino High, for Hyde. These trails, these suggested bike trails, are not on our plan that's being implemented in the past 2 years. The Bike Boulevard is the one that's actually used by our students. And now it's being delayed, and now you are saying that we are not funding for next year. So do you actually care about kids? Do you actually care about safety of people who ride bikes on roads? Some people say, oh, it's so dangerous, so we should just improve all the trails that's not even on the road. Come on, you have to ride on-street bike path in order to get to any trail. And if we don't improve these on-street bike paths, accidents will happen. Yes, the last death isn't, the next serious accident will happen near the other tri-school area, near Cupertino High, Lawson, Hyde. Those areas are not being emphasized. So please, pay attention on-street bike paths. Don't keep adding other paths on the city staff's plate. We have limited dollars, we have limited staff time also. Whenever you add something to the staff time, they will deprioritize other things that's even more important for our students.
Okay. Did you want to make a motion? Councilmember Sinks?
I would be happy to.
I'd like to make a motion.
Excuse me, but I was in the middle of making a motion.
I'd like to, I think I proposed a motion earlier.
No.
That I'd like to provide extra funding for Bike Boulevard project. That as staff had an estimation for phase 1 and 2. And then provide $300,000 for the Linda Vista Trail, and I hope the very committed community members and the supporters of Stevens Creek Corridor, Stevens Creek Bike Trail can help fundraise $300,000.
How much are you proposing that we allocate for bike boulevards?
I think the estimate was how much? Maybe $3 million more.
I would rather have us really look at those improvements. Phase 3, as I said, is not. It hasn't been solidified with the residents in the neighborhood to really know what the improvements would be. So the dollar estimate for that is challenging right now. A number could be estimated. It's just I'm not comfortable in giving you a hard number on that right now.
But for phase 1 and 2, you'll have an estimate.
Yeah, because phase 1 came in at 1.6 million, and phase 2 is a smaller project, if I recall. So, yeah. Well, that was for the temporary improvements, the 70. So it's, probably. And again, I just maybe two.
So about
$2.25
$3 million.
Well, we definitely will need that amount for all the build out. Whatever we wouldn't use, of course, would be ready for the following year.
How long will phase one take?
Well, we were anticipating to build that this year, absent the high bids. So I think it's just a few months of a project to build. The design's done on phase one.
Okay, and then within the fiscal year, would phase two also be entered?
I think the design is, yeah, we could obligate to that. But the whole point of the temporary bulb outs and that was it is the pilot, so we can tweak and make adjustments that we think are likely to have happen. And so that's why we weren't proposing to fund it all out right now.
Well, Vice Mayor, would you be willing to put this on an agenda item in August so that we could more thoroughly look at the numbers and the proposal?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can look at that together with examining the priority of bike paths, all the bike projects, so that
I would
we
support putting it in the first-
prioritize
right.
on-street bike paths versus off-street.
Okay, I would support putting it as an agenda item in our first August meeting. Because, in principle, I largely agree with a lot of the sentiment that you're expressing. But I think that it would be good to provide enough time for staff to turn around a proper item on this.
Thank you. This is very personal for me. My younger son, Ethan's brother, is his best friend. Till now, my younger son, my older son, he rides bikes to school, but my younger son, he refused to ride bikes on street. I take them to off-street bike trails to ride, where there is no traffic at all. But he simply refused to ride bikes on. He would rather walk for half an hour. So yeah, if you keep spending dollars and attention on off-street trail, that's not going to improve the safety of people who have to ride on the road.
No, well, thank you for the sentiments.
Okay. I mean, my feeling has been this is the time that we should be spending some capital reserves on these projects and not pushing them off. And I don't think it's either or. It's not either $595,500 for Linda Vista or these off-street bike trails getting, the on-street bike paths getting done sooner. I mean, this is a priority, even if we have to cut our PCI from 85 to 80 for a few years to save money on asphalt and instead put in these trails. I mean, I would be willing to have that reduction in the PCI if we could move this along faster. I mean, I do agree with the sentiment of the vice mayor, but on the other hand, I really don't want to lose this opportunity for the trail connecting McClellan Ranch with Linda Vista Park. I mean, this is something that we don't want to lose, and I just don't think that it has to be either or. I think, we have the resources to do both.
We have the resources, that's the question. We have upcoming budget deficit. We have a lot of other capital projects we do have to spend. Yeah, $500,000 is not much, but then a little bit here, a little bit there. Projects that really needs to be finished are never going to have dollars.
Right. We have money in capital reserve for prioritization, and to the point with regard to the prioritization, I don't think staff should be maligned with regard to the numerical ordering, because this is actually a pretty low ordered project by their own metrics. It's somewhere in the 20s, right, on a scale of 0 to 100.
Which one?
The Linda Vista Trail. Yeah. So I mean, it just happened to come with a string, and I happen to agree with the idea that we tend to focus on a particular area of town or particular needs, and when we're looking at things that are really much better for a larger portion of residents, right? The Lawrence Mitty Trail goes through Rancho Rinconada, much denser population there. Our library, much more used than a city hall. Things that, that perhaps doesn't have as much of an appetite from, the people that are working in the city, get kind of slowed down. The fact that, some of us on council actually stalled off an employee head tax, and the largest employer in our city then was happy enough to come to the table and say, look, we're going to invest a significant amount of money into your bike trails. And yet those council members were not then consulted during that period of time when Apple was negotiating with us. I think it is indicative and symptomatic of more of an underlying kind of methodology that we really need to be cognizant of. But I think with regard to this specific idea of taking the bike boulevards and funding them tonight, I don't think we're prepared to really take that question on. But I think what we can be prepared, especially given the fact that they have gone out to bid, is simply that we didn't get a bid that was acceptable enough to take. So I would like to suggest that we table it until the first, table Vice Mayor Chow's suggestion until the first meeting in August, and that we entertained Councilmember Sinks' motion, if he cares to bring it.
The Bike Boulevard project is a project the city has been working on for 2 years. And then yet today, we are not prepared to even provide an estimate to finish it. That shows where is our priority.
Well, okay.
Just leave it, okay? Let me make a motion to receive the presentation and update on prioritized project lists of the adopted 2016 Bicycle Transportation Plan and the adopted 2018 Pedestrian Transportation Plans. And 2, adopt Resolution 19-098, amending the FY 2019-20 Capital Improvement Program budget to include additional funding for bicycle pedestrian projects as follows. Approve an additional $1.275438, that is $1.2 million approximately, or $1.3 million for the Orange and Byrne Avenue Sidewalk Project. B, approve an additional $242,941 for the McClellan Road Bike Corridor, Byrne to Torrey. Approve an additional $65,000 for the bicycle wayfinding project, and approve a new amount of $595,500 plus $20,000 to think about moving that crosswalk, but subject to engineering's staff review of what makes sense to best ensure the safety of people who would cross over to want to continue on that. And that's my motion.
I'll second your motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
I want to add that this is not my first time that I mentioned the Bike Boulevard to staff. I've been asking about the budget for Bike Boulevard since, I think, March.
Okay. We are on to the, I guess we are on to the last item. Council and staff comments and future agenda items. So we do have the future agenda item for considering the bike boulevards and protected bike lanes. So we can put that on the next meeting. And we're going to move 27 and 28 till the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I ask you to clarify the action on the bike boulevards?
Leon, do you want to repeat it? Because I can't remember the exact wording.
I think there are 2 items. One is the examine the priorities of all the projects in the bike master plan and the pedestrian master plan. So we take a citywide look. What's our priority?
Well, as I said, that was a very long effort in 2016 and 2018.
I know that was but we have been changing them, we have been moving things.
Well,
So I think we should take a look at.
Okay. Well, while I respect what you're saying, I mean, that's the reason why it is a flexible document. That's why we talked about why things do switch around in that, and why we are going to be
And then I'd like
looking at it
to
again in 21.
clarify the process of moving things around, because it has been, seems to me at least, even now, it seems to be moved around without transparency. So I would like to clarify that process.
So is
Okay,
that
and-
the second, is that the second piece you were going to say, or is that?
No,
a
that's the
third?
first one.
Oh, okay.
So the
I heard two
exempt the
things.
priority and clarify the process of adding a bike path project to the next year's CIP part to get funded. Like Carmen Bridge got funded. No idea why it was
No.
even added to the council agenda.
Did Carmen Bridge get funded?
No, the feasibility study
Oh, the
got
feasibility
funded.
study,
Yeah.
okay.
But why that particular one? Why not intersection of Stevens Creek Stelling?
Right.
Right. How did that get added? What's the proper process?
Okay, we got that. But I also, what I had mentioned about maybe taking some of our capital reserves to speed up this whole process of bike boulevards.
Yeah, I'd like to have visibility of a 5-year plan. Let's look at what's our plan to implement this, all the bike paths, right? Not just 1 year by 1 year. And sorry, the second item was the funding for Bike Boulevard project. The 3 phases of Bike Boulevard. Maybe have a plan of a timeline of when we could get an estimation of when we can get it done. And
Well,
then a best estimate.
Okay, is it the desire not to do the temporary work that we've been discussing?
Oh, no, I think the temporary work's critical.
We want to do
I would also
temporary.
point out that a bike boulevard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that is not protected bike lanes necessarily.
No.
A bike
Exactly.
And for the people that don't want to ride on the street and will only ride in protected, separated bike lanes, the bike boulevard is not going to give them that perception of safety.
It's a poor
Yeah.
alternative to a protected bikeway, in other words.
It's. I mean, if you look in Palo Alto at the Ellen Fletcher Bike Boulevard, it is highly successful.
But it's for the
But
areas.
it's not protected.
But it's for the areas where it's impossible to install protected bike lanes. So Bike Boulevard, the idea is to provide measures to slow down traffic so that bike can feel safe, share the same vehicle lane as the car traffic, right? I think that's important for our students who are biking to
Right.
schools. They should feel safe,
Well,
slow down the
Right.
traffic.
Could
so they
I
can
suggest
ride.
that staff may need some time to think about when they can really effectively bring this back to us? I don't know if it's the first meeting in August or not. I mean,
Well,
you'd
you-
have to say, right?
Yeah, if we're putting in the temporary measures, then that's going to get done on the first 2 phases in a matter of months. And, we're going to be evaluating that. So we're not looking at doing physical construction, likely this calendar year.
Meaning
giving some
you
time.
need time to go implement the pilot,
Yeah, the
basically,
pilot,
and get feedback about it.
So, but,
Okay.
I hear that we want to be aggressive at this. We could say at mid-year that we come back and do something with the bike boulevards, and we have a solid number on what to talk about.
Would it be okay if you just came back once we've got the pilot implemented and give us timely feedback at a council meeting
Absolutely.
on what sort of feedback are we getting? Is
Mm-hmm.
is it being successful? Do we think at mid-year it's time to turn some of these improvements into permanent
Yeah.
better improvements or something like that?
Yeah,
I mean,
and we can be completing these conversations with the neighborhoods. They take time, and we can be
Yeah, right.
completing
Yeah,
that
they
in
take
parallel at the
time.
same time.
And also, I think what has happened in the past 2 years is there are maybe 5 bike path projects that are already funded by the council, but they don't all have the same priority. Some gets pushed up, because a lot of community members are asking for it, like the Rignot Creek Trail. It has a lot of difficulties. It has you need to talk to so many people, but it gets pushed up, so it keeps getting done. But the bike boulevard, it also needs to have some challenges that need to be resolved, but it's not being prioritized. Even projects that's already funded, there are certain priorities. Maybe the council or the staff should consult with the council. Among all those projects that's funded, which one, when there is limited staff time, which one should get higher priority?
Okay, does anyone else have any any council comments?
I'd like to make a request that when postponed item number 28 comes back, that we also include considering early receipt of staff presentations. Staff presentations up to this point are just completely unevaluated by council or the public prior to the meeting itself. And so I think it would be really useful to be able to have a copy of the staff presentations at the same time that the packets come out, at least, on the Wednesday beforehand.
The slide decks?
The slide decks, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I've just seen the last several years, sometimes there's some different information that's actually quite pertinent and would have been extremely important to consider 3 or 4 days ahead of time.
Exactly.
And so I'd like to add that to the language for the item, which I'll go ahead and email to the city clerk and city manager, if that's okay with at least another council member.
And I'd like to add an item that Council Member John Willie mentioned. We would like to have wider notification radius by default, because right now it seems it's 300 feet for both cell towers and development project like the hotel. I think 300 feet is not enough, right? So I think we should codify it so that we have 500 or even 1,000, depending on, maybe a bigger project should have a much wider radius. So we need to discuss. And then the period of the notification period is like 10 days for the hotel project.
So for clarification on that last item, Vice Mayor, are you asking, because my understanding is you'll have to change a municipal code.
Yeah.
So do you want to entertain changing a municipal code?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Because John keep asking after every meeting, how come we didn't do more notification? How come we only notify them 10 days before? Let's just change the municipal code too, so that
we have to go through that
don't
process.
have to keep asking that every time.
At least the municipal code or ordinance on changing the notification time or the time from 6 days to 11 days, that's in process. So this will go through a similar one. The other clarification, apologies for this, I wanted to make a fine point on the first ask related to bike peds and kind of the reprioritization. It sounded to me like you wanted to...
Not reprioritization, clarify the prioritization criteria for bike path projects. I think that's not only for unfunded project, but also for funded projects. If we have 6 funded projects, what would be the priority for the staff in case there is conflict?
So I thought you presented that with that point system earlier.
Well, I did. I don't know.
That was from 2016.
Yeah, but I don't know how that would be presented any differently than we did this evening.
Right.
For example, if you have Bike Boulevard and Rignot Creek Trail, both require a lot of staff time to reach out to residents. Which one should you do first? Right?
But
I feel that in the past year, Rignot Creek Trail got all the attention.
Well, but as we...
Bike Boulevard, the neighborhood meeting, I didn't even see.
Yeah, but as the feasibility study was presented to council and they authorized the design, I mean, that was the time when you'd say, well, proceed with the design. Of course, there's an opportunity cost in continuing that. But I mean, that is the process.
The feasibility study got passed, and the council funded the project.
That's right.
But at the same time, the council also funded Bike Boulevard a long time ago. The council funded the other projects way before the Renewals Creek Trail. But somehow, this it seems like the newly funded always get the highest priority, and the previously funded, they got slacked.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the case, bike boulevards are great for experienced cyclists, but separated trails, whether it's a protected bike path or a multi-use trail like Renewals Creek Trail, those are for less experienced people that are uncomfortable riding on the street and will not ride on the street.
So
and there's a lot of people.
we have
and I think
different
that's why
priorities.
Renewals Creek Trail ended up, getting a lot of attention, because this is something that's not a bike boulevard. It's something that people, will feel safer on than an on-street path,
So
on-street road.
you are saying
Sorry, I think I should just jump in
Okay,
here.
yeah,
I realize
it's
this is
not an
about
agenda
whether
item.
to add items to the agenda. So just to
Okay.
go
this
over
is
my
why we need to
notes.
discuss it in August.
Right,
Because
so-
his
Okay.
priority
There's-
is off-street higher priority. For me, it's on-street higher priority, and the council needs to discuss that.
So I have, it takes two members to add an item to the agenda. I have two members who wanted to have number 28 come back with also considering that staff resolutions be made available at an earlier time.
Presentations.
Presentations, sorry, presentations. There's also one about, we want to get direction about moving forward on wider radius notifications, like as a citywide municipal code amendment. The vice mayor has made two proposals. One is a future agenda item to consider funding for the 3 phases of the Bike Boulevard project. There was an amendment, a kind of a friendly amendment or suggestion that, well, why don't we instead have staff come back once the pilot has been implemented and give updates and work on directions with the neighbors, have conversations with the neighbors in the meantime. So can I assume that that is what's happening instead of the proposal to come back to look at funding
No, I
at
would
an
like
upcoming
to
meeting?
have a timeline, even if we have phases. Because right now, the timeline posted for Bike Boulevard on the website is way outdated.
So it would be a presentation on updating on the timeline of the Bike Boulevard projects. And
Yeah.
Is there a second council member? who would
I'll
like
do
to-
that, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to my idea of including staff presentations. I didn't actually get a second person to support.
Yeah,
that.
I'll support that.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I thought I heard Vice Mayor second that.
Well, she talked about it, but she didn't actually explicitly support it. So I would just say, I think I have a sense of where the tension is in Vice Mayor Chow's concerns in terms of having a relatively low priority project be brought to the forefront for whatever reason. There's heavy lobbying from within our community, or there's a condition placed upon it saying that you have to get this done by December. I think if you looked at it structurally and procedurally, you could address this by essentially saying, let's look at how we do this. Because apparently there's no formal way that would get presented or recommended by staff. So if there is something in the future that would spur on something a little bit lower ranked to kind of to the forefront, essentially on our agenda with a monetary ask or some kind of approval, then we could potentially put in a procedural set of recommendations.
Yeah.
You might say, well, you need 2 it's similar to an agenda item. You need 2 council members to go. And I think that gets to the crux of the concern here, which is to say that there is a little bit of ambiguity, well, there's complete ambiguity. I mean, how does something that scores in the 20s kind of leapfrog something in the 70s or 80s? So I think that's really kind of
Yeah,
but
that's
take
something I
that,
want
you
to
know.
clarify.
Yeah.
But also another thing I mentioned earlier is examine the priorities of bike and pedestrian projects. This is something that the council agreed to do back in April 30th.
But we can look at the metric.
When we did the
Okay.
CIP budget.
So the thing is,
This was supposed to be today's item.
we have a list, and they have been prioritized on a numerical scale of 0 to 100. And so what Roger's saying is that he doesn't know how he would do it any differently unless we're to go back and say, let's adjust the metrics, let's reconsider how these are enumerated, something, specific. But, I mean, they've already been assigned a value from 0 to 100.
No. Yeah, they already been assigned the value, but then like Roger presented today, it's in the attachment, but it's not in his presentation. Did you take a look at the entire list of the priority?
I saw the list that was provided to us.
He provided
Right.
that, right? But then the list actually has a lot of gaps. So some projects.
Okay, let's not examine
Like
each one
here,
now.
Like
Leon?
the green ones are the ones Roger listed. The not green ones,
They
we
don't have a
didn't do
number, so-
anything. So these are the ones we skipped. So what I mean is, we need to take a look at also the projects that we skipped, and then be conscious, okay, this is
okay.
what we actually want
Okay.
to skip.
So that speaks to the exact procedural point I was saying. Let's try to figure out where the structural infirmities are and the ambiguities are, and then ask staff to come back with a set of recommendations that help us give some clarity of mind and notice to the public as to how these items end up moving up on the list. And, I'm all for flexibility, but I think at this point, if we take our past practice, you could get the 5 items on the bottom of the list, and they could just be presented to us, sometime mid-year, if we were going. And that's really not that far of a stretch from describing what happened. I mean, and if you look at the
Exactly.
Apple money, right, I mean, the public wasn't really represented in the sense that, we were kind of told by our staff as well as, by a company's preferences, what would be good investments. And so, in terms of being able to say, hey, look, let's have more of a structured metric for this that actually gives us some peace of mind that there's some public input and the needs of, higher usage populations are being met. I mean, I think this is a fair ask.
Well, how things get redistributed, I think where there's the most, there's a proximity to adjacent higher priority projects.
Again, let's not talk about
Right,
substance right
yeah.
now. I think what I'm
Right, we're
hearing
trying
is
to set the agenda
there was
items.
a second to talk about procedural matters around how priorities are set.
Yes,
But not
exactly.
necessarily about looking at each item and whether council wants to move this trail up or that trail down and renumber them.
Correct. I don't think we have the qualifications to do that
That
either.
one, that was correct. But that specifically was something I requested to be put on agenda for today, but the staff didn't do it today.
But there are
You're one council member.
No, in April, on
They have
April.
to- they have to listen to what the majority want to do,
Look at
Leanne.
the April 30th minute.
Or two
Look at the minutes of
There
April
were 2 people,
30th.
but one.
I and John, and then the council actually has consensus. It wasn't recorded in the minute of April 30th council agenda that we will look at the priorities of bike project. And that, at that minutes, it says we will delay all the bike path project to look at priority first and look at other CIP project.
Well, I don't think that's what happened at April
separately.
30th, actually. It was more, we would agree to consider looking at reprioritizing, but it was not a commitment to reprioritize.
And we do have the numerical values assigned to them,
Correct.
in the list. Well, so it's coming back.
we need to finish up here.
We will look at the priority, yes, but we didn't.
Okay, I got one final one based upon our prior discussion. I would support examining consistency with the general plan policies for new developments to essentially create a checklist for items to put in a potential development agreement in the event that a developer asks for a general plan or some concession that would allow us to go back and look at items that are important to us. And so this is in the context of the discussion on the Cupertino Village Hotel and Vice Mayor Chow's comment that in consistency with some of the general plan bike-related requirements, perhaps that would have been something that we could have added to the development agreement. And I think that if we had a list of these things, that tracked with general plan priorities that would affect those particular areas, that could be very useful in the future. And so again, I'm describing this as support of examining consistency with general plan policies for new developments and creating a checklist for items to put in a potential development agreement. So is there a second for bringing that back? It doesn't have to be in the next meeting, but sometime in the future.
Yes, maybe we should also add other plans and municipal code. Some of the standards are in like the Stevens Creek connectivity plan.
Sure, sure. Yeah, the specific plans
Yeah.
or the various other, general area plans and the code. But our general plan is fairly comprehensive. I mean, it's got more than 500 points, I believe.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Any more agenda items to add or council comments? It's 2:30. If not,
Well,
what?
Just
Yes?
to clarify that last item, Councilmember Paul, so are you, we do have the general plan authorization process, and there's a resolution that sets that out, and it lists some things we consider as, the city would like to consider as community benefits to be proposed to receive those authorizations. Is this item to look at that list and consider if we want to add other things to those community benefits to further the policies in the general plan? Or was it broader than that?
It's broader than that in the sense that it's going to be geographically specific. Because if you take, for instance, the general plan, a general plan item that says, we support bike boulevards and connectivity, and then you go further and you take a look at what the bike plan is for the city as pertains to that particular geography, then it is something that you could potentially add to a discussion point with the developer in that particular area. So kind of a broader based principle that you would want to be able to look at, for instance, bike plan improvements. Similar to, so in Monte Vista, if someone's making a certain level of modification to their home, you do have to build out the sidewalk. But I don't believe that it's codified that a developer of a commercial property has to then pay for, something along the road next to their development. But, because we have development agreements and sometimes people ask for, variances or general plan amendments, that does afford us the opportunity to take a look at that. So it wouldn't be a community benefits list per se. I think it would be more of some overarching principles as to how we connect a potential list, a checklist of development agreement items to discussion points as to what we would ask for, for a developer that connects to the stated policies we have for development in the city. So so if someone just kind of randomly says, hey, look, it would be great if you gave me, X million number of dollars for this random thing, yes, that would be a community benefit, but isn't necessarily tied to our general plan, isn't necessarily tied to the geography and the needs of that particular area and the impacts of that development. So to answer your question, no, it's not adding to the community benefits list. It's, I think, just trying to get it more interconnected with our general plan principles and the other stated needs of the city.
And this would be a city policy that you would want staff to come back and get council direction on developing that and what kinds of things to put in the policy?
Yes, and a proposed list of items that could be.
And would you like staff to develop that proposed list of items, or is that something that staff comes and it's more of a study session for council members to talk about what proposed?
I think the more fully baked it is, the better, because then there's more material to work with.
Okay.
Actually, it's not exactly what I have in mind, but what I have in mind has nothing to do with general plan amendment. It's a list of standards that should apply to any project that we should check if it complies with all the general plan policies and then all the different plans they need to comply with and the municipal code. So any project, anyone want to propose something,
And my understanding is
should
the
have a list
community
that we
development
check.
director has that now as projects are proposed.
This is something that should have been available for any project that we check. And then when we examine that list and we find out, for example, implement bike plan, if that's ambiguous, if it doesn't mean they should implement, if we need a development agreement so that they would implement, then we need to fix our code so that it's objective standard.
And then finally, just to wrap this up, if indeed the community development director does have that list, then I think it would be, really good for the public and the council to be edified as to the existence of that. And it's always good, I think, to affirm the positive mechanisms that you have that sometimes aren't really as well publicized. And maybe if they see the light of day, then, you can get a little bit more gentle encouragement from council and the public to adhere to those requirements. So if that's the case, great. Maybe it turns more into a study session to remind us what we already have. So, but I, personally, I would leave it in staff's good hands. And I don't think what you're suggesting, Vice Mayor, is at odds with what I was proposing as well. We can pull in, asks and items that you could potentially put into a DA as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that it?
Did you want to adjourn for any particular manner?
I'm sorry. We are going to adjourn this meeting in the memory of David Knapp, our former city manager, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. So I personally didn't work with him, but I know Darcy and Rod did. So in memory of David Knapp, the meeting is adjourned.